across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening, this is the Evening Exchange. I'm Peter Cardwell. Andy Burnham has finally told us a little bit about what he is going to do as Prime Minister, but then of course he ran away from reporters without taking even a single question. We'll talk about what he said, why it matters, and how a number 10 of the North could change things, or, in my view, actually, probably not change that very much. I think it's a bit of window dressing. Also, does devolution work? I'd love to hear from the 9 out of 11 different regions where people rejected having an elected mayor. Also, maybe you live in Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. Do you think devolution's working for you? I'm not sure it's working in any of those different parts of the United Kingdom, to be brutally honest, although that is verboten when it comes to Northern Ireland. Of course, people say devolution's wonderful. The principle of devolution, people working together, great. The actual execution of it, I'm not so sure. We'll talk as well about immigration, big topic today. Shabana Mahmood saying that if people are sponsored, they can come to this country. It's worked in Denmark to some degree, but will it work here? And also, could David Miliband become the Foreign Secretary? Well, actually, he wants to increase immigration by 5 times the number of illegal immigrants. He says asylum seekers in different areas we could take 5 times more than we do already, although migrants using the European Convention of Human Rights to stay in Britain will cost the taxpayer £4.9 billion. We know that. Also, maybe you're a parent or a grandparent. Apparently, according to a professor, those who read bedtime stories to their children are unfairly disadvantaging other people's children. Since when were you not allowed to want what's best for your kids? On that note, actually, we're talking about white working class kids being left behind. A big inquiry has talked about that. We'll talk about Israel too, the United Nations, and not the United Nations, but a body affiliated to them, accusing them of targeting Palestinian children. Absolute nonsense, of course. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about as well, including an interview with Katie Lamb, the Conservative MP, who has talked about shoplifting in her constituency and how the police are really not dealing with that properly. Loads to discuss here on Talk. Be sure to give me a shout and let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note or a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10. Stay with us here in the Evening Exchange. So let's get started with what Andy Burnham has been saying today. He went where else? Manchester, to make his first speech since it became pretty clear he's going to be the next Prime Minister. The nominations aren't in yet, and that process doesn't even start for another week and a half or so, but it's unlikely anybody will challenge him. Let's see what Andy Burnham has been saying about what he thinks the job of Number 10 North, as he puts it, should be.
The job of Number 10 North will be to make power flow into the Midlands, into the southwest, into the east of England, and yes, into London, as I said before, as much as into the northeast, Yorkshire and the Humber, and here in the northwest. It will be about offering new opportunities to extend devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland by taking power deeper down. The people of Dundee and Bangor feel just as distant from Holyrood and the Senedd as they do from Westminster. Number 10 North will be the nerve centre of a rewired Britain.
The nerve centre of a rewired Britain. Sounds like a lot of empty rhetoric to me. We'll see what actually happens. He also spoke about his plan for government.
We will create a more streamlined state with a clearer purpose to power up all parts of the country and put a laser-like focus on growth and regeneration, good growth. The change will be driven through the Prime Minister's office in an extended operation based here in Manchester. The job of Number 10 North will be to make power flow into the Midlands, into the southwest, into the east of England, and yes, into London, as I said before, as much as into the northeast, Yorkshire and the Humber, and here in the northwest. It will be about offering new opportunities to extend devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland by taking power deeper down. The people of Dundee and Bangor feel just as distant from Holyrood and the Senedd as they do from Westminster. Now get this. Number 10 North will be the nerve centre of a rewired Britain.
Sorry, there's a bit of repetition in those clips. Apologies for that. Let's find out what Kemi Badenoch, who is, of course, the leader of the Conservatives, thinks of what Mr Burnham was saying there.
People not having plans is why we are changing Prime Minister so often. And if Andy Burnham comes in without a plan, he is going to have another short tenure. Making announcements is not the same thing as having a plan. So I want a swift and steady transition because I want to be able to ask the Prime Minister what he is doing for or to our country. I'm the leader of the opposition. That's my job. I'm not able to do my job. I was elected constitutionally to do this. I want to be able to do my job, which is hold the government to account, and right now there's not really anyone to hold to account, and the Labour ministers are too busy trying to sort out jobs for themselves. That is not right.
Zarina has been in touch and says, I'm becoming very alarmed at the thought of Burnham and co. They appear to be on the precipice of making outlandish decisions and change just when we need stability. Could it be that Starmer's slow and steady approach might have been a better win for the country? We cannot afford drastic changes, can we? And Mick says this undemocratic government resembles a sixth form locker room with few confirmed dishonourable members who want to rob pensioners' bank accounts to pay for invaders. Break out the water cannon, says Mick. I wonder what you think about this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Charlotte Griffiths is editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday and joins me now. Good evening, Charlotte.
Good evening.
Charlotte, there's quite a lot of words in there. I wonder what it actually means. He wants good growth. I mean, who doesn't want good growth? I want bad decline. You know, I want the economy to contract. I don't want growth. We heard this from Liz Truss, growth. We heard it from Rishi Sunak. We heard from Keir Starmer that growth was going to be his number one priority, although there are lots of number one priorities that seem to change every 5 minutes. Regeneration. I mean, who doesn't want things to be regenerated? Did you get any detail from this?
No detail at all. And the other word he kept saying was streamlined. Can you think of anything less streamlined than
more government
and MPs going up and down on a train from London to Manchester, or working from home, or phoning it in and dialing it in on Zoom, or, you know, not turning up to the right Zoom meeting and going slightly missing because you don't know if they're in Manchester or London. And also, he mentioned the Midlands. Now, one person who does live in the Midlands, in Herefordshire, near Shropshire, kind of on the border, is Quentin Letts, the Daily Mail sketch writer. And he was banned from even turning up to this big speech. And there he is, in the Midlands, ready to go. And no, he wasn't allowed to turn up. And there were no questions and answers afterwards. And then the other thing that I thought was quite notable that he said something along the lines of, my political direction is not up for negotiation. I just think, hold on a minute, nobody voted for you. You haven't got a mandate. What do you mean it's not up for negotiation? You can't make this radical change and announce it with no plan, no detail, and then say it's not up for negotiation and you can't ask any questions, and no journalist, unwelcome journalists can't come in the room.
Well, it's really interesting you mention that, because of course we remember some journalists, generally from left-wing publications, were talking about how awful it was when, you know, Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson wouldn't take a large number of questions. Now we have a situation where Alistair Campbell, high priest of Blairism, is saying that this is a good idea because it lets the speech speak for itself. But the problem is that, I mean, number 10 of the North, I just think is more administration. He told us quite a lot about how the administration would change. He didn't tell us a lot about the substance. And actually, when you think about devolution as well, Fraser Nelson, the Times journalist, pointing out that 9 out of 11 English cities rejected the idea of mayors in the 2012 referendum. So unless things have changed dramatically in 14 years, there are lots of people who actually don't want more devolution, certainly in England.
Yeah, I don't think devolution has got us anywhere. You know, look at Birmingham, for example. I mean, it's a slightly different thing, but Birmingham is an absolute basket case. You know, I totally agree with you. I don't think the people actually want devolution. I think what they want to hear, and maybe it's what Burnham's getting at, is that the blob has been slightly dismantled. But I don't think that means putting the blob on trains. I mean, I've actually recently moved from London to Herefordshire, and a train is £175 return. I mean, we can't have this. We can't have civil servants traipsing up and down. It hasn't actually served the BBC very well.
Yeah, it's a very good point with Salford, and I'm not sure that's actually providing value for money. There's a lot of money, people going up and down on trains for no apparent reason. Perhaps we could just talk about a couple of other matters that are around today. The doctors' strike. The junior doctors have decided that they will take the deal. Charlotte, is that welcome news?
Well, I suppose it at least ends, any threat of a strike. But it was only, it was nearly 50-50. It was just over 50% voted. So that means there's still quite a lot of unhappy doctors out there. We all know what happens when they get their money, is that they, in a year's time, they'll want more.
Of course.
It's very, very generous. I mean, 10% a year for 3 years. I think they've had. The numbers are getting pretty high.
They've done very well. They've had pay rises which are far bigger than many others that we've seen in other parts of the public sector, to say nothing of the private sector. And as you say, it'll be 5 minutes until they're asking for more.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love a 6.6% pay rise. Did everyone else get a 6.6% rise?
Me too. It'd be great. It'd be lovely. It'd be lovely.
No, as you say, every time they get what they want, the BMA just asks for more. It's sad to see it being repeated by, I suppose it was James Murray.
Yes, indeed. Well, he's finally got his deal anyway after West Streeting failed and Conservatives failed as well. There's clearly quite a lot going on at the Home Office as well. The public is apparently now to decide asylum appeals as Mahmood pledges to speed up decisions. She has sacked one of her very close civil servants, the principal private secretary there. She's having a massive problem with Mike Tapp, who still has his job as immigration minister, and they're not even on speaking terms, which reminds me actually of when I was in government. There were two senior people, a cabinet minister and a minister in a department, who the sort of joke was that they're like Taiwan and China. They didn't officially recognise one another because they absolutely hated each other. Clearly, as the sort of dying days of the Starmer administration continue, there's a lot that people are jostling for position, and I wonder what you make of the kind of policy idea about deciding asylum appeals and having all sorts of random people from the public doing that other than judges.
Yeah, I'm not across the story. Is this the one where she's asking for sponsorship?
Yeah, this is members of the public will be trained to decide asylum appeals instead of immigration judges. This is reforms to speed up cases. She's going to set out plans for a new independent body which is going to prioritise cases in the public interest and high harm offenders, starting from late 2027. She's also said she's going to remove 45,000 field claimants and foreign offenders. So some strong policy here, but she may not even be Home Secretary in a few weeks' time, Charlotte.
Extraordinary, at late 2027. Yeah, I did hear earlier on the news she was calling it this new policy over and over again. But the problem is, in late 2027, A, so many more migrants will have come in that time, and B, she probably won't be in the post. So, yeah, not very impressed with Mahmood on this one.
And just before you go, Charlotte, I know you're very much the royal whisperer as editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. I read your dispatches every Sunday, and they're really superb to refer back to, actually, especially when you're looking at how things develop. The Princess of Wales has really done superb fundraising, hasn't she, with her Three Peaks Challenge?
Yeah, it's extraordinary, this video that she released. She's speaking better than she's ever spoken before. And
she's a great communicator. I mean, she really is.
Yeah, in the past she hasn't always been, but now she's really grown into the role. But I think it's brilliant. When she used to be quite nervous and she used to stutter a lot, I think people found that really human and they really related to that. And we all know that the opposite end of the spectrum is somebody like Meghan Markle, who just pumps out rhetoric, doesn't really mean anything. It's all a bit word salad, a bit Andy Burnham. But what Catherine did, what Catherine did today was she really spoke from the heart, and she did that Three Peaks challenge, for the Royal Marsden, and it clearly meant so much to her. And it's a brilliant piece of PR because for the first time in a couple of years now, the language all in the coverage is all about her health and how well she's doing.
Yes.
And referring to her constantly as a cancer survivor, cancer sufferer. So I think she's been really clever to sort of find an amazing achievement that also closes that chapter in a way. And she sort of says, right, from now on, you'll think of me as a healthy and strong, Princess of Wales, which she is, and we're all very relieved about.
Of course. And just remind us of the significance of the Royal Marsden. That's where she was treated.
That's where she was treated exactly, and where she's gone back to and talked about having chemotherapy before, which was more detail than we've ever had. And yeah, of course, she's completely committed to the Royal Marsden. It saved her life.
Charlotte, great to talk to you as always. Charlotte Griffiths there, editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday. Thanks for joining us on the programme. We've got a voice note from Mike on number 10 in the north. This is what Mike thinks.
Number 10 Downing Street is the home of politics. It should not be changed. If he wants to be the Prime Minister, he needs to move to London. He's just being lazy and wanting to move everything up to him to save him a little trip.
I think he'll be in London, but I think we'll see him more in the north of England than perhaps many other Prime Ministers as well. And lots of people say, disagreeing with this idea, Bill in Fleet says, how do you streamline government by creating more devolved government? He has nothing to give but up north or Manchester, such a waste of time and money. Elaine says, I'm horrified about the prospect of the SNP given any more power in Scotland. If it was up to me, I would abolish it altogether. It's corrupt, wasteful, dangerous and useless. Leslie says, who on earth said Burnham is charismatic? He's so dull in that speech. And the speech was dead in the water, says Leslie. Amanda in London says, good evening, Peter. Number 10 up north, what a load of utter garbage. We thought Starmer was bad, we ain't seen nothing yet, says Amanda in London. Do you know what? I've said this before. I think Andy Burnham is going to be the Liz Truss of the Labour Party. I think he's untested. I think he doesn't believe anything. I think his ideas... I mean, if this is the big idea, if the big idea is more government and it's going to be elsewhere in the country, why not get the government that's in London working for the whole country? That's what I would argue. I mean, putting essentially another government department in Manchester, I don't know what it achieves, to be honest. Maybe Lee disagrees with me on this. Lee's in Doncaster and has some thoughts. You're very welcome to the programme, Lee, and thanks for giving us a ring on 03444 499 1000. What would you like to say?
Thank you, Peter. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I think you've summarised what I want to say anyway. I hear what Andy Burnham said. I was listening to it with interest. He talked a lot and said nothing. That's one of my favourite sayings.
Yeah.
But it's almost like he wants to create an anarchy where you're going to get different parts of the country setting off against each other, like Devon and Cornwall, for instance, who can't agree on what an official cream tea is, jam or...
I was down in Cornwall recently, Lee, and I folled the rules. I put my jam on first.
I'm afraid I don't know which is which.
In Cornwall, it's jam. In Cornwall, it's jam then cream. In Devon, it's cream then jam.
Thank you.
These things are important, Lee. These things are important.
No, but what I'm getting at is, if I'll give you an example. If you look at, because I have some experience of this, having represented companies over there. If you look at northern France, look at Lille, which is, if you like, the Birmingham of France. You've got their second city, and you've got lots of different council areas. And one thing that the French all complain about is there are too many administrators.
Yeah.
In other words, politicians and civil servants, and they want rid of them. So some bright sparks up in Lille say, well, the thing that's holding this area back is the lack of an effective government.
Yeah.
What we need is something that's going to focus, like Andy Burnham did, on Manchester. We're going to focus on Lille, and we're going to bring about this big change. And all the individual districts, boroughs, parishes, prefectures, whatever you call them, said, yeah, that's a good idea. And we'll put it to the people. And the people said, well, it sounds good, but please, no more politicians.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, we'll go ahead with that. So they go ahead and they have something for the greater Lille area, which all sounds very good, and it's going to bring more investment in internationally. It's going to become more of a place that everybody knows about. And then the first thing that happens is all these individual councils say, well, now we have this responsibility to interact and put things towards the greater district of Lille. We're going to need some special people for that, and they'll need secretaries, and they'll need offices and transport, and they'll need time off.
Lee, this all makes perfect sense, and I don't understand why more government is necessarily what we need. And if you think about some people in this, there are people who multi-member constituencies, for example, in Wales now, in Scotland, and in, well, list people in Scotland and Northern Ireland. You've got 5 members of the Assembly there per constituency. You're thinking of all these people who represent you. I mean, you get your MP, your local Assembly member, maybe a local mayor in some areas as well, councillors and all the rest of it. You have all these people who represent you. Is the country governed better as a result? And I think that's a very big question to ask. Lee, thanks for bringing your experience and your opinions to us. I appreciate that. That's Lee in Doncaster there. And Phil in Thurrock says, I've had enough of Burnham already. Miliband would be better prepared. Phil, there's a lot more Burnham to come, let me tell you. Penny says, my goodness, when Starmer resigned, I thought, like a lot of people, Burnham would be okay. The better option, how wrong can you be? The man is going to make Starmer, the total incompetent idiot that he is, to actually look as if he was doing a good job. We need to be afraid, very afraid. The smug-looking man is a socialist, which we know doesn't work. He believes in open borders and will not stop immigration. We have not had any say in Burnham. And Burnham and what he's going to do to the UK. We must have an election, says Penny. So much to discuss. Get your messages, calls, texts, tweets and voice notes coming in. 0344 499 1000. Debate Desk next. Joe Wheeler and Sean Hickey will be with us to go through all the big stories of the day, and I want your views too. Stay with us.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of people getting in touch, including Margaret, who's currently in Tunisia. Maybe she's on her holidays. Margaret, I hope you're having a nice time. What the heck is going on with our so-called government? Burnham is being lauded as the second coming. Listening to his speech, all rhetoric, no substance, devolved decisions to local mayors, more wastage and corruption, and more civil servants will be employed. Look at the mess in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. The questions are, if local authorities are going to be making decisions, why do we need all these MPs? More stouts in the trough to feed. Unfortunately, some people are going to believe all this codswallop, especially the champagne socialists. I am in despair for my once great country. Tony from Stratford-upon-Avon, the problem with devolution is that it hands power to local incompetent people who can't resist using their powers. More interference, more waste and more low traffic neighbourhoods. Debbie says, I think they should change the rules to say if you change Prime Minister you have a general election. They might take their positions more responsibly because it'll all be up for the chop. Well, lots to discuss, including even the content of those messages, it must be said, and thank you to everybody for them. We'll take more calls in a minute or two as well. I'm on the debate desk now with Joe Wheeler, the broadcaster and meteorologist. She's been reasonably busy recently with the crazy weather. Yeah. And Sean Hickey, who's the head of content and politics. Joe, Sean, lovely to see you back here. Joe, we will get a little weather update from you between now and 8 o'clock because I want to find out when this heat wave is going to end, although things are a little bit better. We'll
when's it ending or when's it starting?
When's it end? Well, maybe it's ended. We'll get back to that anyway. But when it comes to, we're sort of asking the broader question about whether you think Andy Burnham's got a good idea and whether devolution is actually working. Let's just hear a little bit more from Andy Burnham, what he said earlier on today.
The job of Number 10 North will be to make power flow into the Midlands, into the South West, into the east of England, and yes, into London, as I said before, as much as into the North East, Yorkshire and the Humber, and here in the North West. It will be about offering new opportunities to extend devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland by taking power deeper down. The people of Dundee and Bangor feel just as distant from Holyrood and the Senedd as they do from Westminster. Number 10 North will be the nerve centre of a rewired Britain.
That is the prospective Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. It's interesting on his own thoughts and his own experience. He obviously doesn't have any defence experience. We're going to be talking about that on the programme tomorrow. Big announcement coming tomorrow, I would expect, from the government. Also, where he doesn't have foreign affairs experience either, and that's fair enough. A lot of people who become Prime Minister don't. Remember when Bill Clinton became President of the United States, his local pancake shop was a big chain across America. They said his foreign policy experience was at the International House of Pancakes. I must say I have lots of experience of the International House of Pancakes, as my frame would suggest when I lived in America. It's a wonderful place. But Mark Rutte, who is the Secretary General of NATO, has been talking to Sky News, and he says he's not worried.
I know you say you'll look forward to meeting Andy Burnham if and when he's confirmed as Prime Minister. But, you know, he's been mayor of a town, to quote your friend Donald Trump. He's been Health Secretary and Culture Secretary. He doesn't have any sort of foreign affairs experience. Does that concern you?
Not at all, because what you see with most prime ministers, when they come in, except for when they have been defense secretary or foreign secretary before, but most of them will come in with, there's a lot of political clout, a lot of political experience. But when it comes to the international stage, you have the best advisors in this country. You have fantastic ambassadors, fantastic security advisors, fantastic senior military advisors in the defense department, who will help the prime minister to get up and running in a couple of days. So I've no doubt.
Mark Rutte there, the Secretary-General of NATO, the role apparently that Keir Starmer might want himself. Sean, what do you make of all this? Do you think...
I was just going to say that myself. Like, he's not worried about Burnham, but he should be worried about Keir Starmer.
In fairness to Mark Rutte, his period of office comes to the end in 2008, but I'm not sure Starmer is necessarily the most pro-defence Prime Minister, but you may have a different view.
Well, I mean, it seems the NATO kind of General Secretary position has just become a kind of schmoozer-in-chief at this point. Like, I don't remember Jens Stoltenberg ever going on Sky News whenever he was in charge. So it just seems like a strange thing that one week he's in the Oval Office showing these, what was it, the little posters that he had for Donald Trump talking about
calling
how
him
great
daddy,
it was.
Which wasn't weird at all.
It's just an incredibly strange thing for such a powerful office to be doing in the first place. But no, I think he's, I do think he's right on Burnham as well. I think, particularly with an idea like this, it's not, it's quite inoffensive, I think, to propose to people that already, like, whether it's councillors, whether it's people in general, in assemblies in Greater Manchester or in London, have more power. Let them practice what they...
Do we... I mean, my concern, Joe, is that he's talking a lot about how government would work. He's not talking about what government would actually do to solve the problems. And in that entire speech, he didn't mention really a lot about the problems that we're facing, the task ahead. He didn't mention immigration once, for example.
No, absolutely not. There was a lot of kind of political positioning, but not a lot about policy detail. And most importantly, you know, what it might cost. I mean, as abysmal as I consider Starmer to have been, I'm under no illusion that Andy's probably going to be worse when all is said and done. Why do you think that?
Why, I mean, we haven't heard that much from him. I think we should hear more. I think he should do many more interviews. I've obviously asked him for an interview myself through his press people. But why do you think he'd be worse?
Because until this morning, really, he didn't set out much in terms of policy. And again, you know, how he was going to pay for it. He is very Manchester-centric, and I'm from Manchester, so, you know, I have every reason to kind of go, hey, there's a thing. The North is being recognised. But this whole devolution thing is just going to create more managerial nightmares than we've currently got. And
don't people like local accountability? Don't they be able to like to say, that's my person, that's my local mayor, that's my local councillor, I can go to them and say I want to change this?
Halcyon days, but where's the money?
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, this country faces so many problems. Migration is one of them, and I believe that within the programme we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll talk
other
more about that in a
elements of
second.
You know, we're talking about massive bills there, and unless those are cut, I don't really see where else we're going to go. Interestingly, not rattling the first fence, the markets didn't take too much of a dip after Burnham's speech, and I think that's partly because from purely a stage look at it, he took quite an optimistic tone, whereas Starmer has always.
Well, Starmer was always very doom and gloom, wasn't he? He was always saying, things are really dreadful. And what you've got to do in politics is offer people confidence and hope. Did Burnham do that today,
I mean,
Sean?
that's the thing. I think a lot of people within Starmer's Labour Party would have looked at today and said, well, actually, there's not a lot new from what Burnham's proposing here. I think he just put a little bit more meat on what Starmer's been proposing since 2024. He has been kind of putting the carrot out there of saying that there would be more devolved powers to regions and local councils and whatever it might be, but he hasn't actually put the meat on the bones of it. And I think with Andy Burnham there, you're talking about somebody that's been quite successful as the mayor of Greater Manchester, an incredibly popular mayor as well for things like the B network and what have you.
Yeah, got a sort of North Korean level of vote share the last
Kim
time.
Jong-Burnham. It was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. But I mean, you look at things like that and you say, okay, if he's able to take this kind of a relatively small administration in the United Kingdom and turn it around and be an incredibly popular person off of it, and then come down south and say, actually, based off of what I noticed when I was here before in a Labour shadow government, what I did in Manchester and what I want to bring back from Manchester to here, I especially, on your point earlier on as well about how you're going to pay for it, I think if you're moving some of the civil service away from London, you're saving on the London waiting.
Well, this is a big point though, because I remember when the BBC moved to Salford, a lot of people still kept their London allowances to persuade them to go up there, and you couldn't sack them either. But that's often the way of the civil service and the BBC too. The point I find interesting as well is that this might come back to bite him, because the beauty of devolution is that you can always say big bad Westminster. Politicians in Northern Ireland have made a career of doing that over the past kind of 28 years, and they always say, the problems are at Westminster, not enough money or not enough ideas or whatever, when actually the health service in Northern Ireland, for example, has been on and off in the power of local elected representatives for a generation. When Andy Burnham was mayor of Greater Manchester, he had a £3 billion budget. Now he's going to have a £1.4 trillion budget. Is he up to the job, do you think, Sean?
I think give him a chance. I mean, what did Keir Starmer manage before he was the Prime Minister of the country? He was the head of the CPS.
Yeah, it didn't have
nowhere near 1.4 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
But also on the point you were making about trillion, beg your pardon.
Trillion here, trillion there. Sooner or later, it all adds up to real money.
Exactly. The point you're making there about Stormont as well, what I would say is that what Burnham's proposing is that somewhere like Northern Ireland would not be entirely beholden to the actions of Stormont. If Stormont was to fall and come back and quarrel over whether it's NHS budgets, whether it's Irish language street signs, there'd still be local councils that would be able to divvy up the money that they've been given by dear leader Burnham's prime ministership to be able to continue operating in their own way.
About 8 months ago, Darrell says in Lincoln here, the Labour government were saying they wanted to centralise more police forces by cutting the number of force areas from 43 down to about 20, making larger forces and cutting down the number of chief officers, slimming down the admin. They sound as if they want to go the opposite way with local councils. Do they actually have any long-term plan at all? Are they just headless chickens reacting rather than planning? Darrell, I think there's an awful lot in that. And I mean, I believe there should be a Police England. I think, but just as there's a Police Scotland, I think there should be a Police England. I think there are far too many police forces, and you can do things at a local level very, very well. Lorraine says, every day I become more and more concerned about this character. This is a man, in Lorraine's opinion, who used Makerfield for his own political gratification, a man who had a convicted fraudster to run his election campaign. She's referring to Louise Hay there. She's a convicted fraudster. Burnham has not been in Parliament for 12 years. He has no mandate, and yet today stands at the podium, dressed for a pop gig rather ground for the most important role in the country and has the audacity to dictate to us a manifesto of vacuousness that no one has voted for. This is sinister, and people had better buckle up because he will take us into the abyss. Well, plenty more coming on this. We'll talk about immigration as well. Many problems in the Home Office. I must apologise just for my voice this evening. It's not just as strong as it usually would be. I'm having a little bit of a sore throat and a cold at the moment. It's all the changing weather, which is, of course, Joe Wheeler's fault. We'll come back to her and Sean Hickey in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Mike has been in touch and says moving to the north and making a number 10 north is going to cost the taxpayer even more money as a second building, more security costs, more travel costs. Westminster has been where politics has been for too many years. Peter, loving all the criticism of the Labour Party for a change instead of Reform UK. Nice to see a bit more balance on talkTV. I'm not sure many people would accuse us of being too critical of Reform UK, but you're entitled to your opinion. Dawn in Chelmsford says, when I was in local government, I invested time to demonstrate that my department was not overstaffed. I even got extra staff when I presented facts to the council, says Dawn. Another person says, can you imagine giving Reform UK councillors more money? They're an absolute shambles. They don't even know how to run a council. Well, it depends on the council, I suppose, but yes, they, like many other local councillors, are having problems, and there is some problem with a number of Reform UK councils, as there have been with, Birmingham Council, Labour-run councils, Conservative councils. Glyn in Catterick says, we thought we had it bad before, things are going to get a whole lot worse. Burnham will make Starmer look like a messiah, says Glyn. Keep your comments coming in, 0344 499 1000. One thing the government is happy about, and James Murray, who is the Health Secretary, he's only been Health Secretary for a few weeks' time, but he has succeeded where his predecessors have failed, including West Street, including Conservative administrations as well, and that the junior doctors have accepted a pay deal. Joe, what do you make of this?
Unfortunately, I do feel that it's only a matter of time before they start coming back for more. And that's just going to be the way it goes. I mean, there are all sorts of extra things in this, faster pay progression and a plan to cover out-of-pocket expenses like exam fees. And I'm thinking, well, we've just given you more money. Why can't you pay,
for your own exams?
Your own exam fees. Yeah, it seems quite extraordinary. I mean, yeah, things work for now. But again, the bill will keep going up. What they get... So, I mean, these doctors can earn thousands more each year for things like working unsociable hours and additional hours.
I mean, show me the doctor who doesn't know they're going to have to work unsociable hours.
Well,
this is crazy. They sign up for it in the first place. They know they're going to have to pay for some exams. We already subsidise their education to a huge degree. Even if they're paying full fees, even if they're paying $9,000 a year, we are substantially subsidising what is a lucrative career and will continue to be a lucrative career and can only get more lucrative as you go up. There are very, very few junior doctors who, once they're in a job, don't have security of a job security, don't have the options anyway to train and to become further up the ranks. My sympathy's limited, Sean. Is yours? Or maybe I'm wrong?
I mean, it's been an incredibly unpopular strike in the first place. I think we've talked about this so many times in the past. And I mean, one thing certainly on the beat that we do a union beat at Politics Joe quite a bit. You remember the days of the RMT when it was Mick Lynch and Eddie Dempsey by the side.
Who could forget?
This time around, I think it's been incredibly difficult for the union themselves to sell this to the public. Initially, with a lot of the communications, there was kind of pitting the junior doctors, now resident doctors, of course, from an earlier deal, against other low-paid workers. So talking about how junior doctors, when they just left university or were still in university doing placements, were getting paid the same as a barista. A barista looking at that might say, well, is there something wrong with the job that I do?
And also, I think there was a lot of sniffiness about people, saying, oh, it's only £14 an hour. There are loads of people who get paid £14 an hour and are very grateful to do so and do great jobs as a result of that. And just because you're low paid doesn't mean your job isn't as worthy as a junior doctor. And I do feel that there's an arrogance there. There's this idea, COVID lockdowns didn't help. Oh, they're all angels, they're all heroes. Well, some of them are and some of them aren't. Some of them are bone idle and useless.
I mean, a doctor does a very, very important job.
It's an important job, but some of them are rubbish.
Well, look, they might be rubbish, but they're far more trained than I am to be a doctor. If they all leave, then if I have to pick up a stethoscope,
we don't want that to happen. But have they had us over a barrel, Joe?
I was going to say my sympathies vacillate. They really, really do, because I want to know at what stage they vanish, because they do vanish. I mean, my personal GP surgery is just completely deserted half the time. You can't find a doctor. You can't make an appointment. Only when they decide they want to see you, do they actually phone up. So we've got junior doctors, half of these work across A&E and GP surgeries. Well, again, if you go to A&E, you're going to be there for hours and hours. There are people who make that decision not to go to A&E, however bad they're feeling, because they simply just don't want the wait. So, I mean, where are these doctors?
Well, in fairness, we want more of them, though. We want to absolutely ask them to come in and serve and do their job. But that, of course, is a controversy that's going to run and run, although they have accepted this, and I'm delighted that's happened. The Health Secretary and the Department of Health are going to be absolutely delighted with that. Let's turn to another government department, the Home Office, because there's all this handbags between Shabana Mahmood and her immigration minister. She's also sacked someone who's her principal private secretary. A really, really important job in the Home Office. Runs the private office, the main support office for the Home Secretary. And now we have a couple of new policies as well, Sean.
Yeah. When it was coming to the... Sorry, are you referring to the...
Well, there's a couple of them. There's the migrant... There's the idea from Shabana Mahmood that there could be a sort of sponsorship for people or communities for migrants to come to the UK, more legal and safe routes that she is proposing. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, it's only so far you can go by being inhospitable. I mean, Shabana Mahmood has been quite unpopular within Labour ranks as a... Well, it's been divided, hasn't it? There's people on the right of the Labour Party, there's people on the left of the Labour Party that are quite opposed to what she's been doing. She's wrote back a lot on what her initial philosophies on the compassion and hospitality of the UK should be. I think in terms of sponsoring communities or helping communities with integration, I think it's a good idea. Places like Scandinavia do things like this already. And while you see a lot of kind of conversation about how integration goes in places like Sweden or Denmark or Norway, it's still quite a positive experience in comparison to how tense things can be in the UK.
Although the Danes recently were talking about the call to prayer and the immigration minister saying that he wanted that banned. The Home Office found, this is the story, the Home Office found to introduce new capped safe and legal routes for refugees to come to the UK this year. It said it would allow organisations such as universities, community groups and businesses to sponsor refugees who applied to come to the UK. It's based on Canada's asylum system, but Sean's absolutely right in that is very similar to what has happened in various Scandinavian countries as well. The government says it's going to press ahead with changes to how human rights and modern slavery laws are applied to asylum applications to root out what it described as vexatious claims. Joe, what do you think?
And I don't understand why we're looking at any type of integration, or more to the point, yes, we should be focusing on integration of the people that we've already got, and we should be doing something about the people coming in, because we've got this chaotic situation now where, some schools in the country are speaking like 27 different languages. People attending hospitals, you're given a notice in again, 19 different languages of somebody to call for an interpreter. Our courts have the same issue, that when people are going to court, that, all these different languages, and we're paying for all of this instead of turning around and saying, sorry, if you're coming here, you're going to speak English.
Well, it's interesting that David Miliband is being touted perhaps as a new Foreign Secretary, maybe even from the House of Lords. He is someone who previously has said that he would be happy with 5 times as many asylum seekers in this country.
But why? I don't understand what the drive is for that.
He worked it out and said that each constituency only takes something like 7 asylum seekers if you sort of broaden it all out, and he said they could take 5 times as many.
Yeah, right. OK, statistics and bloody lies. Sorry, I'm not having that. No.
It's interesting as well with some of the figures that we have, because funding healthcare, education and welfare is going to add up to £141,000 for each asylum seeker, according to Home Office figures. This is asylum seekers who invoked the European Convention of Human Rights to stay in the UK last year will cost the taxpayer £4.9 billion over their lifetimes. That's Home Office analysis. I mean, this is just going to fuel anti-immigrant feeling, isn't it, Sean? And it's also going to say to a lot of people who want to support the Conservatives or Reform UK or Restore Britain, who would withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights.
Well, I mean, outside of the ECHR, I think one of the problems with something like this is that we're talking about a system that lets people into the country but doesn't allow them to work. So I think if there's another
Well, it does after a year. You can be in the country for a year.
In the meantime, though, you're still
you're right.
you're stoking this kind of impression from the public that there's people in the country that aren't working, that are getting benefits, and they're just sitting on their backside not doing anything.
They are.
But if you give them the opportunity to work and they don't, maybe there's another question of whether you can deport the person, or you can keep them here, or you can find them work, or you can do multiple things with the person that's given all of the means to get on. Whereas if you're hamstringing them from the day that they arrive in the country, it's a different story.
Shouldn't the focus be on people who are here and born here and people who don't have a job here already?
Why don't we do both? Okay. Why don't we do both?
That's a crazy idea.
Have a chat to Andy.
I mean, we're talking earlier on about the pay deal for resident doctors. I mean, you're looking at a country where it's impossible to retain people that are having their medical degrees in the country because the pay is so low in this country, so they move to places like Australia, New Zealand, the Gulf states. We've now gotten to a point where a lot of the people that work in the health system or in the council services or things like that are migrant workers. Now, we have vacancies here already, but there's a lot of times where people just don't want to do them, and that's where migrant workers fill these gaps and plug these gaps.
There's got to be the problem, though, and I'm not disputing your analysis there, but the problem is in the middle of what Sean says there. There are people here who don't want to do the jobs. I'm on an industrial estate about every 3 weeks or so. I go there for a specific reason, and there is a sign that has been up for about 3 or 4 months that says warehouse supervisor required, and I just thought there must be loads of people who are qualified for that job. It's a good job, it's looking after people, it's contributing to the life of that industrial estate. Warehouse supervisor required, and I just thought, why can't they find someone? There are loads of people who don't have jobs and would be presumably qualified for that job.
I would agree with you. I mean, for all that we talk about frustrations, you know, that are in the news on this programme, it is the channel that calls itself Alarm Clock Britain. And, you know, we look at those who choose not to work and claim benefits in the same way that we do with, you know, anybody coming here and claiming from the system when they've never put into it. Going back to the story you're talking about in the beginning, 141,000 per individual over their lifetime. Sorry, that doesn't include their dependents that come with them. You know, it's likely that the cost is far, far higher than that. And a lot of this is using Article 8. The most ridiculous things like, you know, oh, my son wouldn't survive with the nuggets that they serve over there.
Chicken nuggets was an excuse. It sounds absurd. It sounds as if it's not true, but it absolutely is true. You know,
do you know something? When you're looking at these situations, you simply say, what kind of joke, what kind of April Fool is this?
Yes.
So, I mean, yes, that cost is just ridiculous and should not be countenanced. But equally well, yeah, we need to do something with people who are born here and who choose not to work, because that is not acceptable.
Becca's been in touch and says the leadership contest isn't even open yet, but it's wall-to-wall about Burnham. Is there nothing else going on in this country? Well, I think Becca, who leads this country, is probably quite a reasonable thing to discuss, but I know what you mean. You're going to get a lot more Burnham coming your way, Becca, let me tell you. Mark in Coventry says, if Burnham wants to devote all this power to local mayors and areas, surely we don't need all these MPs in Westminster. Why don't we sack the lot of them? All of this means if local people are not happy with how things are going, Westminster will just turn around and say nothing to do with me, Gov. I mean, you've illustrated my point from earlier, Mark. There's always someone else to blame in a devolution system. Very few people actually take responsibility and accountability. Alex says Andy Burnham is the perfect definition of a paper tiger. Huey says, good evening, Peter. As one who has now suffered nearly 20 years of the SNP, I can tell you now that having Andy Burnham as Prime Minister will be, for the entire UK, the same as having the SNP ruining the country up here. I'm so depressed, I'm actually stopping tuning in to all news media. Well, I hope you continue with us, Huey, certainly. Fern in Glasgow says, everything's all right, don't worry, we're all going to be fine. Don't worry about Burnham's lack of knowledge in foreign policy. Mastermind Lammy will keep him on the right path, says Fern in Glasgow, reminding us of our civic duty as citizens of this country to go on YouTube. After this programme, anytime after 10 o'clock is fine, after this programme, go on YouTube and put into the search box David Lammy Mastermind, and you will not be disappointed. We are trying to find the source of this, but there appears to be something going round at the moment in a usually reliable Twitter account, but we just haven't second sourced it yet, so I'm just saying to you, this is basically a rumour. Andy Burnham reportedly no plans to live in Number 10 and is going to remain at his home in Manchester. It would make him the first Prime Minister since Harold Wilson not to live at Number 10. This often happens where you have people saying we're not moving house. Victoria Starmer, Lady Starmer, for example, said that she didn't want to move house, didn't want to move to Number 10, because it is a sort of gilded cage. How that's actually possible and advisable, certainly from a security point of view. We remember the firebombing of the Starmer's home, an absolutely dreadful, dreadful thing, and a very, very serious news story. I mean, I just wonder if that's something, Sean, you think is reasonable to say or actually practical?
No, not at all. I mean, there are certain countries in the world where there isn't a set residence for the Prime Minister of the country. Yeah. But if there is a house there, you should be living in it. The entire system operates around the security and the advisory infrastructure that you have around Number 10.
Quick word from Joe.
I don't think Andy's quite got his head around this. If you're going to be Prime Minister, Number 10 is where it's at, even if you are as fond of Manchester as he obviously is. OK,
lots more to come on the debate desk in just a second from Joe and from Sean. Stay with us.
Let's get to the calls now. And Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Hey. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to...
disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people...
more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including on Twitter, where Stu says the idea of Burnham to have a Number 10 of the North is the familiarity of Brussels and Strasbourg costs a fortune and achieves very little. That's the fact that the European Parliament 1 week of the month is in Strasbourg, 3 weeks of the month is in Brussels, and they move everything back and forward. They move a load of documents and things. There was a special train to do it. It costs a huge amount of money. Every conversation starts when I was running Manchester, says Stu. They should have a cat at the Number 10 of the North, and it should be called Winston. That was actually one of the original original ideas for Larry the cat to change his name to Winston. You can read all about it actually in a very good book that was recently published. Coming out in paperback on the 17th of September. Burnham says Jason was just talking more waffle and the word salad that means nothing but attractive to the thick and women voters. No accountability or questioning allowed. Another speech from the left-wing playbook. I'm not sure everyone would necessarily agree with that. Before we get into all sorts of matters, particularly when it comes to whether reading to your children creates inequality, Joe, what is going on with the weather and what's going to happen soon? Is it going to get a little bit cooler? It has already.
Well, it's supposed to have done. I mean, currently in the southeast, and I live on the east coast. 37.3 on Friday with high humidity was absolutely horrendous.
Crazy.
I know. And yes, we're all sitting there waiting for the end of the heat wave. And cooler and fresher it has become, but not dramatically so. And, you know, looking at the charts further ahead, that high pressure is never very far away. And suddenly social media starts blowing up with all these, weather enthusiasts going, the high pressure's coming back, the temperatures are rising.
So it's going to be another heat wave?
It's on the cards. It's certainly very much on the cards, and this one could last longer and be more severe.
Well,
it's the same kind of omega block that we had.
Okay.
And so, I would just keep the house cool.
Keep an eye on that. Well, get rid of the omega block by having fish oils that have omega 6 and 3. If that doesn't work, I don't know what will. Just a couple of minutes to talk about a professor at the University of Warwick in England. He apparently also holds the distinction of being Mrs. Bouquet's husband's son. The actor who played Mrs. Bouquet's husband was Clive Swift, and this is the son, apparently Adam Swift, saying that bedtime stories activities do indeed foster and produce desired familial relationship goods, but he wouldn't want to ban them. He says that parents engaged in bedtime stories activities should at least feel kind of bad about it sometimes. I don't think parents reading their children bedtime stories should constantly have in their minds the way that they are unfairly disadvantaging other people's children, but I think they should have that thought occasionally. Joe, go.
You don't really want to set me loose on this one. First of all, what's he a professor of to be saying kinda bad? Yes, that is outrageous. Sorry, I mean, my English teacher would have shot me for that. What do you mean disadvantaging kids? I mean, in these days where a lot of people put them in front of screens all the time, you are always giving your children something. It's physical contact, it's, communication and reading them stories. I mean, absolutely, of course you should. And disadvantaging other people's kids, I don't care. I'm sorry, I will read to my kids. Well, I won't, because they can read themselves.
Surely you're disadvantaging your own children by not reading to them, Sean. What do you think of this?
Yeah, if you're not bringing them to the park, if you're not putting them into an extracurricular activity, it's not the fault of the parent that's doing those things,
Yeah.
I mean, on your point of the feeling kind of bad about it, it is probably a hang-up from his own childhood then.
My English teacher told me off for using a lot. You shouldn't ever use a lot, apparently.
Or nice. That was a rule.
Nice,
across the back of the
What's wrong with nice?
I had that.
It's just insipid.
Okay, well, you don't want that. What was your favourite bedtime story as a child, Sean?
What was it? I think it was probably Hansel and Gretel.
That's a bit dark.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember what I used to...
What about you, Joe?
Actually, mine's the Little Match Girl, Hans Christian Andersen, which is equally dark.
Yeah.
And all of these have been sanitised now for children.
Yes, they have.
The woodcutter no longer chops off her feet because she was wanting those red shoes. I know.
Well, do we know what happens at the end of The Little Mermaid as well?
What happens at the end of The Little Mermaid?
I think your viewers should probably go and
well, it's
go
not
and
like it's
Google
going to be a
that.
spoiler on a Disney film.
I think there's a saw taken to a tail at one point.
Oh, right.
Oh,
goodness. Okay. My favourite bedtime story was the much less violent, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, but made me think about eating, which has not long-term been a good plan. Listen, thank you. I love The Very Hungry Caterpillar. It's great. And I don't want to give away the end, but he does turn into a butterfly. Joe Waiter, broadcaster and meteorologist, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Sean Hickey, Head of Content and Politics. Joe, great to talk to you. And thank you to everybody who has been in touch. We will talk more in just a second about white working-class kids being left behind, according to an inquiry. The Education Secretary has welcomed it, and I wonder if that actually comes into bedtime stories as well. Do you read bedtime stories to your kids, or is that just all something of the past? Whatever your view is on that. And Andy Burnham as well, and migration, asylum seekers and migrants being put to work. Whatever you want to talk about, number 10 in Manchester and number 10 of the North. Whatever your view is on all the big stories of the day, please do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. There's so much to talk about, and I'd love to talk about it with you. Plenty of time between now and 10 o'clock in order to do so. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening, this is Talk. Thank you very much for your comments that are coming in thick and fast. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk in a second about white working class kids being left behind according to a new inquiry. We'll also talk about whether parents who read bedtime stories to their children are unfairly disadvantaging other children. This woke academic is talking about that. Load of old nonsense if you ask me. We'll also talk about Israel and the fact that genocide is something that, of course, the left has come up with, the pro-Palestinian left has come up with. Well, it turns out a lot of journalists aren't being killed. A lot of them are Hamas terrorists and have been killed in the Gaza war, and I will shed absolutely no tears for them. We'll also talk about the fact that within that the UN is demonising Israel again. We'll talk to Edmund Fitton-Brown, the former ambassador to Yemen from the UK. Lots on migration as well, and the number 10 of the North, because that's what Andy Burnham wants to do. He wants to change migration policy. He also wants to have much more devolution. I mean, do you feel if you're in Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland, or maybe even in Manchester, that you feel devolution has really worked, that it's good to have more local representatives? Does that make better government? Do you feel better governed as a result? Loads to talk about this evening. 0344 499 1000. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, you can send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on the Evening Exchange. And thank you as well to everybody who has expressed concerns about my cold. It is just a cold. It's nothing more than that. I'm still at work, and even though I'm sounding a little bit more nasal than usual, I do appreciate all your comments. Andy Burnham has been talking about a number 10 of the North, what he wants to do as Prime Minister. Let's have a little look at what he's been saying today.
The job of number 10 North will be to make power flow into the Midlands, into the southwest, into the east of England, and yes, into London, as I said before, as much as into the northeast, Yorkshire and the Humber, and here in the northwest. It will be about offering new opportunities to extend devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland by taking power deeper down. The people of Dundee and Bangor feel just as distant from Holyrood and the Senedd as they do from Westminster. Number 10 North will be the nerve centre of a rewired Britain.
The nerve centre of a rewired Britain. Well, it's interesting that apparently, and there's no confirmation of this, but it has been reported this evening by a usually quite reliable news Twitter account that Andy Burnham wants to live in Manchester rather than number 10. I think that's basically impractical in the security situation for any Prime Minister. It'll be interesting to see whether that happens or not. I expect it probably won't. He'll say, well, I wanted to, but I was told by the security services that I couldn't. I think it's very difficult to secure a residential house rather than number 10, which is an absolute fortress. But speaking of security, actually, Mark Rutte, who is the Secretary-General of NATO, has been speaking to Sky News this evening about whether he's worried about Andy Burnham's lack of defence and foreign policy experience. Let's hear from him. He spoke to Sky News a little bit earlier on this evening.
I know you say you'll look forward to meeting Andy Burnham if and when he's confirmed as Prime Minister. But, you know, he's been mayor of a town, to quote your friend Donald Trump. He's been Health Secretary and Culture Secretary. He doesn't have any sort of foreign affairs experience. Does that concern you?
Not at all, because what you see with most prime ministers, when they come in, except for when they have been defense secretary or foreign secretary before, but most of them will come in with, there's a lot of political clout, a lot of political experience. But when it comes to the international stage, you have the best advisors in this country. You have fantastic ambassadors, fantastic security advisors, fantastic senior military advisors in the defense department, who will help the prime minister to get up and running in a couple of days. So I've no doubt.
Mark Rutte there, the Secretary-General of NATO. And interestingly, Keir Starmer apparently has expressed interest in becoming the new Secretary-General of NATO. We'll hear a lot more about defence tomorrow, and we'll talk about it on this programme too. But let's talk now about white working-class children who have been failed by England's school system. This is a big inquiry, an inquiry into white working-class educational outcomes, which has determined that once-in-a-generation changes are needed to tackle why children from the white working classes are the lowest performing large demographic in England's school system. Bridget Phillipson, who's the Education Secretary, says schools that white working class children need help in schools and beyond. It's been found that they're half as likely as their less disadvantaged peers to get GCSEs in maths and English. It was commissioned by the Department for Education based on statistics for white students who receive free school meals, a standard metric for deprivation. It found that in 2025, 36% of this cohort in England got a grade 4 or above in English and maths GCSE, compared with 72% for all pupils who did not receive free school meals. I mean, that is absolutely dreadful. That is a horrendous indictment, not just of the education system, but of their parents as well. Estelle Morris, who was Labour Education Secretary and judged to be quite a good one under Tony Blair, and a guy called Hamid Patel, who's the Chief Executive of Star Academies, said the report identified issues that could not be explained away by low aspiration or lack of effort. Let's get an expert view on this from our next guest, who's Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, who's an author and academic. Lisa, good to talk to you again. What do you make of this? Is this actually groundbreaking, or perhaps just they've now come to the realisation of what you've been talking about for some years?
The first time I was asked on news media to talk about this was 2011. And I have been on various different news programmes, documentaries, talking about this almost every single year since 2011 because of some report that has come out. So there's nothing new about this.
So there's plenty of these reports gathering dust on shelves then without things actually being done about it. The Education Secretary has welcomed it, but what action do you think? Well, first of all, actually, we'll get to action in a second. Diagnose the problem for me first. What is the issue here? Why is it specifically white working class children?
Because in the UK, we are extremely regionally unequal. So we've got different parts of the country that have various different disadvantages. And in particular, the areas where white working class people live, the ex-Red Wall, the deindustrialised communities, they have the greatest disadvantages, actually, regarding health health outcomes, education outcomes, jobs, and that's because they were deindustrialised 30, 40 years ago. And since then, there's been very little investment in these areas, and that includes education as well. There's also been not a light shining on these areas, and instead what has happened is in places, in inner cities, particularly London, the schools that were very bad in the 1980s and 1990s have really raised their game, and that's the areas where ethnic minority working class people live. So what we've got is this...
We were talking actually to Catherine Burble saying of the Michaela School last week, actually, and that is a shining example. I mean, that's one of the best schools in the country, where you have often ethnic minority kids from pretty tough backgrounds who do really, really well academically,
don't they? They've got a good score.
Yeah.
Well, they've got a really good score, and they've got teachers that are really committed to them. And let's also not forget as well the opportunities that London can open up for you. So yes, there is very poor people in London, there are working class people in London, but there are also lots of opportunities in London as well. So there's lots of things that you can see that you might want to be. For example, you might want to be a journalist, you might want to be a politician, you might want to be in the arts and culture industry. And if you live in London, you can see that around you. Your schools can open you up to that.
As one very wise person once said to me, you can't be what you can't see.
No, you can't. So if you live in Sunderland, Mansfield, Ashfield, even Makerfield, that's in the news at the moment, if you live in those areas, these are areas that have been deindustrialised and forgotten about. And I know it's very easy to call them left behind, but I think there's been purposefully leaving out. So there's been political focus on some areas, and then a purposeful political focus, not on other areas as well. So that's the problem that we've now got. It's been going on for a long time now. And this report, it is welcome, and I'm really glad that we're talking about it again. But what I don't want to be doing is talking about it again next year.
I know what you mean. And Lisa, it's interesting you mentioned there have been some areas that have been perhaps not deliberately left behind, but actually overlooked, perhaps for other reasons. I just wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, what I would say is, this is a difficult conversation to have, but I do think we need to have it. So over the last perhaps 15, 20 years, we've had a focus on ethnic minority ethnic minority groups, ethnic minority children, because at some points they have been falling behind. There's been lots and lots of focus on that. But there hasn't been is any focus on white working class kids. And I think that's what's happened. It's been a political choice. Politically, we've chosen, to make sure that these groups are actually doing all right. And then at the same time, there's been political choices to perhaps ignore these places.
So you're talking about failure on so many different levels, really, here. So how do we fix it? Because there'll be a lot of people who just say, look, you throw a load of money at it. And that sometimes does fix things, sometimes it doesn't. We know there isn't a lot of money to throw at this. There could be if we raise taxes yet further. What can we do to fix it, do you think?
Well, I don't think you do need to throw lots of money at this, actually. I don't think you do. I think what we've got to do is actually make sure that the schools are doing their job. We've got schools. Every area has got a school. So what we've got to do is just make sure that those schools are doing their job. Make sure that the teachers are interested and care. But also, one of the biggest problems that we've got is, imagine that we raise the schools up in these areas and all the kids leave with great GCSE results, great A-level results, but they're then leaving school into an area where there is little to no work.
Yes.
So then what? Do all those people have to move to London? Does social mobility only mean moving to London? So what we've got to do is start to look at the regional inequality And we have. I mean, it's an old saying, but we've got to do some levelling up.
So do you think what Andy Burnham is talking about today with further devolution on number 10 of the North, I mean, he's talking about government administration. He says he will focus on good growth, although we heard that from Keir Starmer and look where we are. I mean, are you encouraged by what he's saying there when it comes to these opportunities that could, in theory, be afforded to the people who really need them, the white working class kids identified in this report?
I like his words. I like the words that he said. Do I have a lot of faith that he's going to be able to do that? I don't have a lot of faith that he's going to be able to do that, because when he walks in Westminster, you know, the focus will yet again change, as it always does. Whenever politicians walk into Westminster, their priority then becomes Westminster. You know, he said he's going to apply the Makerfield test to his politics, but I'm not sure how that test will work in Westminster. You know, is he going to not fund things in London and the South East to fund things in the North and the Midlands? And then do we have the same problems again? Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, to govern is to choose, and he's going to make some serious decisions, particularly when it comes to the money that isn't there, despite the highest level of taxation since the Second World War as a proportion of what the country makes. I wonder what you make of this bizarre story from Professor Adam Swift, who has said that reading to children unfairly disadvantages them, and that children should be thinking about how they're unfairly advantaging their children and therefore disadvantaging other children. I don't know what that means. So reading to, what does it mean, reading to your children? So he has said, let me find the exact quote here. This is a professor at the University of Warwick Warwick here, who says he did an interview with ABC Radio last week. And he said that since bedtime stories activities do indeed foster and produce desired familial relationship goods, he said that parents who engage in bedtime story activities should feel bad. I don't think parents reading their children bedtime stories should constantly have in their mind the way they are unfairly disadvantaging other people's children, but I think they should have that thought occasionally. What do you think? Yeah. Well, I'm working class. I'm from a working class community. I'm sat in a working class community in the coalfields of Nottinghamshire right now, and I'm really not bothered what a professor at Warwick thinks about this. What I would like to do is bedtime stories, and sitting with children and reading stories and telling stories is a really important part of parenting. Yes. I'd like to focus on that, and not whether, you know, not really worry about the people who are doing it already. I'd like to start to think about how we get everybody to do that. And can I just say as well, is even though working class parents might be very tired, they might be working lots of different jobs, stressed, etc., they might not sit down and read books. My mum never read me a book. She wasn't a great reader, but she told me lots of stories. Yes. So you know, there's lots of ways that different people engage in communication with their children, and just because it's not the average way, the middle class way, doesn't mean it's not happening at all. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the stories can fire up something that so few children actually get a proper chance to develop when they're looking at screens. This bizarre concept of having an imagination, which is something I certainly had as a kid. Then I started reading books, then I started writing, then I became a journalist, and here I am now. And a lot of that was because I had an imagination as a kid, which was fostered by my parents and teachers. Lisa, really interesting to talk to you. Lisa Mackenzie there, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, an author, an academic, real common sense spoken by her. And Stuart says university people know nothing about real life. I think perhaps talking more about Professor Adam Swift than Lisa herself, who's an author and academic, and she certainly knows what she's talking about. Penny says parents don't read to their children now like we used to. They're too busy on their phones and tablets. Also, are ethnic minorities being put before them? Well, that's essentially what Lisa was saying. The priorities need to be thought about there. On this matter as well, Stuart says, whoever that professor is, he or she is obviously not that clever. Talking not about the person we've just spoken to a second ago, just to be very clear, but the professor at the University of Warwick, Adam Swift. And Stuart says, would this professor tell parents of children good at sport not to give them a football? Children need good role models, and parents are often the first, male or female. If the parents display good expressive reading, then the child will try to emulate this. This Burke of a professor would have no students without any good readers around. I thought these people are supposed to be clever. Very good point, Stuart.
Peter from Shrewsbury says these junior doctors, they don't deserve the title of resident doctors. Yes, I will always call them junior doctors. They don't care about patients, they clearly only care about themselves, says Peter. We were all subjected to austerity measures, having years of pay freezes, but we haven't demanded real-time pay increases. The first pay rise they received was so generous, it was clear to see they would be back for more. The rest of the taxpayers haven't made these demands. Just shut up and get with your job, or resign, you horrible, greedy parasites, says Peter. We'll take some more calls in just a second. Stay with us, and if you want to get your voice on the air between now and 10 o'clock, plenty of time for calls. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Let's get to the calls now. And Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to...
Disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I'm never talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people...
more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch, including Samantha in Scunthorpe, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Samantha, what's on your mind this evening?
Yeah, hi, Peter.
Hi there.
I don't know if you've still got your guests with you, because I've just run into Morrison's, but
I don't, I'm afraid, but we can pass on your sentiments, or you can react to it. By all means, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know, it's fine. The chat was talking about, you know, allowing migrants to work. So
yeah, that was Sean, who was on a little bit earlier on the debate desk. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't agree with that actually, because I think, you know, that just. Anyway, never mind. I don't agree with that. But when it comes to allowing them to work, then I think, you know, it depends what they're going to do, doesn't it? Because you could end up in a position where, you know, they earn, but they don't earn enough, so then they have to have benefits to top it up. Along with that can come other things that you might qualify for. And the whole cost keeps going up, doesn't it? You know,
there's also the point that, you know, would you about getting those jobs ahead of British people, like, ahead of people who are in the queue. But then, of course, there are lots of people who are born here who choose not to work and are very happy to live on benefits. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? Yeah, something needs doing about that, but they're just allowed, really, to do it, aren't they? But you know, I don't agree with you know, allowing them to work, and I think, you know, it depends what work they're doing, if they were, and how much they'd be being paid, you know. And but I suppose they're sitting in hotels doing nothing on that, or in other accommodation. I mean, they shouldn't be here in the first place. But if you are processing, it comes down, doesn't it, Samantha, to this whole thing about processing, if you actually decide whether someone is legitimately here or not.
Yeah, and that's what I would rather them do. You know, get on with that, do that, and then, you know, make a decision, really, rather than the time it takes at the moment. But yeah, no, I just thought I'd make that point.
No, that's a really good point, Samantha, and thanks very much for it, and appreciate your call, Samantha in Scunthorpe there. Leslie in Hartley says, I'm amazed at this Professor Swift. Of course parents want the best for their children, but act in the child's best interest, not to disadvantage other children. Who are these people, says Leslie. That's a very good point from Leslie in Hartley there. Rebecca in Somerset says, Cardi P, regarding bedtime reading, such a precious thing for parents and children, but we went a step further. Bedtime prayers, highly recommend. Great show as always, says Rebecca in Somerset. I had bedtime prayers, a very religious upbringing. I'm not religious anymore, but there we are. Serena says, get everybody reading. It's essential for all learning. She also says, on the white working class, parenting classes might help. Schools are working hard, often against poor behaviour, compounded by unsupportive parents. Sorry, this is perhaps a controversial thing to say, but we have a collective responsibility. You can be as controversial as you like on this programme, because we are the home of common sense, and if you want to say things, as long as they're within the law, we will broadcast them. Mark in Lincolnshire has some views on Andy Burnham as well. He was up north today in Manchester talking about what he wanted to do. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, not really that much to say on Burnham, to be honest. I mean, I think, you know, I have obviously listened to the show through the day, like the station through the day. And it's just what I expected, really. You know, a lot of people wetting themselves about Andy Burnham coming in and all the rest of it. The reality is there's nothing you can do about this. He will end up doing what he will end up doing, whether we like it or not. We can scream and shout about it all we like. He's still going to just do what he's going to do for the next 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I just think a lot of this conversation, Mark, about an early election or a snap election, I just think that's not going to happen.
I mean, from what he said earlier, that doesn't appear to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he was referencing 2 years and what have you. So it doesn't sound like that's where he's thinking.
Well, he said he wanted a decade to do certain things, but you're absolutely right. I mean, he's not coming in to say, right, let's have an election, Reform UK are well ahead in the polls and have been for many months. Therefore, you know, he's going to put himself out of a job. He doesn't want to be the shortest serving Labour Prime Minister ever. He's very happy for that to be Keir Starmer.
Well, exactly. I think what's more important to myself, you got a bit of a cold, Peter.
I have a bit of a cold, yes. Do you know what? Producer James has just given me some of his personal stash of Lemsip, and I've just had a blackcurrant Lemsip, which was a bit of a revelation. I've always gone for the lemon ones before, but it was certainly something that has helped. But yes, I'm struggling slightly with a cold, but I'll not moan too much about it. I've only mentioned it 5 or 6 times this evening.
Well, the blackcurrant one's really nice anyway.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
What's of interest to me, far more than Burnham, is why nobody seems to be talking about the British Nationality Act. That's something I find very interesting, because I've been doing some research on this over the weekend. You know, and what this essentially will do is it basically lets people from the Commonwealth have a very easy route to essentially visas to the country. It doesn't give them citizenship, but it does give them easy access to visas. And as we know, there are quite a few Commonwealth countries that have a high propensity of visa people, you know, student visas, work visas, that they just don't go home. So this is basically something that's hiding in the background there.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we have been talking about it a little bit tonight in terms of this refugee sponsorship route into the UK as well. Do you think it's right that communities and individuals can sponsor individual refugees to come to this country? That's what's proposed by the Home Secretary.
No, I don't. I think it's wide open for abuse. I think what you'll probably end up finding is you'll essentially get a situation where, you could have a Muslim community group or something that suddenly sponsors loads and loads of people from, I don't know, Pakistan or somewhere to come because they're going to put them up or whatever it is they're going to do. Because this is something that in particular, the Muslim community are very good at doing with themselves. They're very good at fundraising between themselves within a local community.
And I just think, Mark, I think there's a lot in that. And I also think that this idea that these local people will essentially, or ordinary people who aren't trained in the law, will make a decision as to whether asylum seekers stay. I mean, to me, that should just be a judicial process. That should be within the law. Is it right, legally or not, that this person stays in the country? It shouldn't be up to people who are trained.
Well, there's been this whole thing about, what was it, on asylum claims, wasn't it, or something? And putting, people, essentially juries to decide.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm talking about, yeah.
But the thing with this is, do you think for a second they're going to put people like you or I on those juries?
I would say that that's a very unlikely thing. Mark, some really interesting thoughts there. Thank you for them. That's Mark in Lincolnshire. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi, Cardi B, on migrants working. How about local councils not pay them, but they earn what they're getting, picking up litter and all the jobs councils can't afford to pay for? Then they wouldn't have time or the energy to work illegally and hang around outside schools. Very interesting thought there from Joanna. And there's so much litter to be picked up. There's so many times when just basic things would make where we live so much better. Again, that industrial estate I was at today, for example, we were talking about the warehouse operative and them not being able to get someone for that job. Full of litter, loads of litter alongside the roads. They try to spruce it up. It's in West London, lots of sort of sparkly new homes that have been put up, apartments I'm sure that people have been paying huge amounts of money for, and just when you go around the roads, I was walking around the roads and just full of litter. It's absolutely horrendous. Nigel is in London and has some thoughts on Andy Burnham. Nigel, what do you make of this number 10 of the North? You're very welcome to the programme.
Well, good morning. Maybe you should call it number 10A of the North, because number 10 is not going to move from London. But Peter, you'll know as a man who works at number 10, it's not Andy Burnham, 3 people and a computer screen. There's about 200 plus people who work inside that building.
It was more like 400 in the whole of Downing Street. Yeah, I mean, it's a question of how big this office is going to be and whether more administration and more government is going to make any difference.
Well, the thing is, there's a number of points which Andy Burnham has failed perhaps to undress. First of all, where's the building going to be? Who's going to secure it? Who's going to police it? Who's going to pay?
It's all going to cost a lot of money, Nigel. It's going to cost a lot of money.
Are you going to have a number 9 next to number 10 as a main briefing room, which you and I know quite well?
Yeah, indeed. It's very interesting you mentioned that, actually, about the number 9 briefing room. This very expensive £9 million for this briefing room that Keir Starmer barely used as Prime Minister.
Of course, and he likes to stand next to his flag, which, of course, he doesn't like, Mr Starmer. But I think what's interesting for me, it's never going to work. Are we going to have all the MPs going to Manchester once a week for a cabinet meeting, first-class rail tickets and coming home, and with their close protection teams as well? That's my point about Mr Burnham and number 10. The other points are the steel industry. Is he going to suddenly reignite coal-fired power stations to make steel and upset Ed Miliband? Of course he's not. And of course he talks about devolution and more power to the councils. Well, the councils are bust. We've got Birmingham Council bust. Loads of councils across the country going bust. Who's going to fund them if they've got no money?
Well, it's a very good point. Listen, thanks for that, Nigel. Cautionary views on this number 10 of the North and where Andy Burnham is coming from. A lot just not in his speech today, just a lot of sort of big words and a bit of waffle, if you ask me. I'd love to know what the grand vision is, and maybe we have some view of that, but if it's just more administration and more government, well, that's not something that is going to either save any money or make life better for people. I also I have a major problem with devolution in general. I don't think it works, and I don't think it has made our country, any of the awesome foursome of the UK, better governed overall. Look, in Northern Ireland, for example, devolution was a good idea at the time. Belfast Agreement I fully supported and still fully support to get local accountability, fine, but has Northern Ireland been governed well? Well, I don't think so. I think there's a lot more that could be done. We're going to talk about Israel in a second. There's a number of stories around, particularly about the United Nations saying that Israel is deliberately, or a United Nations report affiliated to it, not the view of the United Nations, saying that individual children are being targeted in Gaza. I mean, that's just not true. Also, what's not true is what we've been told for a very long time about journalists being targeted. Again, not true. Genocide, just nonsense. But also the United Nations as an institution targeting Gaza. We also have had the Archbishop of Canterbury in the Middle East as well, and it's been pretty controversial who she's met and why. Stay with us here on Talk. We'll hear from the former ambassador to Yemen, Edmund Fitton-Brown, who also worked in a senior role at the UN, in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch. Just been having a quick look at my Twitter there over the break, and one person said the UK is head first in the gutter and on its knees, and yet this lot on Talk are talking about whether to put cream on the scone first or the jam. I don't think the British people can be helped. Well, the fact is that we can talk about lots of things, talking about lots of serious issues, but I was asked a direct question. Cornwall, it is jam first then cream. Devon, cream first then jam. I was in Cornwall last week and I did the right thing. Amy says the idea of Starmer becoming the next NATO Secretary-General is ludicrous. This is the man who has had just 2 members of his government resign over our defence spending, and he wants a job telling other countries how much they should be spending. Well, we'll hear a lot more from the Prime Minister tomorrow on defence, and it'll be very interesting to hear that. We'll debate it on this programme. One person who knows about defence and knows about Israel and the United Nations as well is one of my favourite guests, Edmund Fitton-Brown, who's a former ambassador to Yemen. Edmund, you've written a really good article, typically well thought out and concise, about the United Nations and their unhealthy obsession with Israel. I want to get into that in just a second. But first, I wonder if you could just tell me your thoughts on the Archbishop of Canterbury, because Sarah Mullally has been in Israel and the Palestinian territories. It's been pretty controversial. She went to the Nova exhibition. I meant to go this weekend, but I still haven't been able to go. I'm hopefully going this weekend. The Nova exhibition, which is going around Britain. It's in London at the moment. She's been in the Middle East, the Holy Land, as I'm sure many Christians would call it, and has been meeting some pretty suspect people. Tell us your views on this.
Yeah, it's difficult for her. I mean, I have some sympathy for her because she's doing this for the first time and she's trying to avoid creating a row. Unfortunately, often avoiding creating a row ends up meaning that you duck the real issues. And as people have commented, some of the people that she's talking to are actually Islamic extremists. They're profoundly hostile to Christian interests, and of course the way that the situation of Christians in the Holy Land has gone in recent years has been largely a factor of Muslim oppression rather than Israeli oppression.
Of course, there's been a lot talking about the Israeli oppression incorrectly. We'll get to that in just a second, but Lambeth Palace has got in touch with us. A spokeswoman sent us this message to say, at the invitation of the Anglican Church in the region, the Archbishop of Canterbury was visiting Palestine and Israel to pray, worship and meet with Palestinian Christians. The Archbishop has made repeatedly clear that she opposes all forms of anti-Semitism. She's also met British Jewish leaders and communities to assure them of her and the wider Church's support at a time of heightened vulnerability and rising anti-Semitism. From one large institution to another, the United Nations' toxic obsession with Israel. Just tell us a bit about this and why you decided to write about this, Edmund.
Yeah, I mean, there was a specific reason to write about it, which was the finding by this commission of inquiry that has been set up by the UN human rights body, which accused Israel last year of genocide and has just issued a report accusing Israel of genocidal targeting of Palestinian children. And I could not be silent in response to this, because if you read this report, it is completely devoid of evidence. There's no evidence. It's all anecdotal. It's accusations being made by people who've already made up their mind on what they think. And so I think it's an absolutely disgraceful piece of reporting and a blood libel, frankly, really defamatory and completely inaccurate.
Emphasising the anti-Semitic trope of Jews murdering babies, and that is something that has been around for centuries. Why do you think the United Nations allows these reports to be written when they are so fact-free?
Well, there is this interesting thing about the structure of the UN. So you end up with agencies like the Human Rights Agency, and they then appoint what they call independent experts. And of course, I understand that system because I've been an independent expert myself with the UN, but working in an area, counterterrorism sanctions, that was pretty forensic and pretty objective. Whereas, of course, in these very politicized and emotionally charged areas, all the wrong people are actually applying to become experts. They're coming in with a pre-existing hostility to Israel, and then they're just trying to make the facts fit their narrative.
Is there an anti-Israeli bias institutionally at the United Nations, do you think?
There is, definitely. I mean, I think the current Secretary General, Guterres, is himself partly guilty of this, because he himself is an old Portuguese socialist who was a big friend of the Palestinian Liberation Organization back in the day. So he's no friend of Israel. But of course, where the bias is at its worst is actually in the General Assembly of the United Nations, where every country has an equal voice, and there's no attempt to distinguish between larger or more serious countries, as opposed to some of the shower that are part of the General Assembly. And you get voting blocs like Muslim voting blocs, Arab voting blocs, developing world voting blocs, which are just uniformly hostile to Israel. And also they're vulnerable to being bribed and coerced by troublemakers like Russia and China. So you end up with this horrible unbalance in the General Assembly. And then, of course, as I said, you get these agencies, worst of all being the Refugee Agency, which talked about before. But the Human Rights Council is absolutely dreadful for this. And once these experts, so-called, issue a report like this one, unfortunately, the leadership of the UN just wash their hands of it. They say, well, we're not saying we agree with it, but it's not our job to correct experts because they're independent.
Yeah, and UNRWA, as you mentioned there, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. I mean, some of their staff have been accused of being directly involved in the 7th of October. They've sacked various people. In fact, they sacked more people recently as a result. And there was a spokesman for UNRWA who was on my programme on one occasion. The interview didn't go particularly well for him, it must be said, as I had many, many accusations for him, none of which I think he answered correctly. But nonetheless, I wonder if this can change in any way, because if there is this institutional bias, will it simply continue, especially when we have, there is proper reporting to be done by international bodies. There is properly, we do want the truth when it comes to the Middle East, when it comes to Israel and Gaza.
We definitely do. We need to get to that somehow. One hope that I have is that the Americans will remain reasonably serious about pressing for UN reform. We talked about UNRWA, and the Americans, in fact, have got investigations going into more than 100 UNRWA staff that they're concerned about because of their ties to Hamas, possible ties to October 7th. What Ambassador Waltz is doing, that's the US permanent representative to the UN, who used to be the US National Security Advisor, is that he's holding the budgetary card. He's withholding US dues to the UN, and the US is the biggest contributor to the UN budget. And he's saying, you know, we're not going to pay you unless you make changes that are to our liking. He is getting their attention, and there are some stirrings of reform. But unfortunately, I just think this is such a big task in an organisation that's gone so far wrong and is so badly led.
I don't want to be too introverted when it comes to journalists, but we've been told on so many occasions that journalists have been targeted in the Palestinian territories and the Gaza war. We've been told that for such a long time that the truth couldn't come out properly because of reporting restrictions in Israel. Isn't Israel awful because they haven't been letting people in? A lot of the information that has come out about a famine that didn't happen, for example, about starvation that didn't happen, and about journalists being killed that didn't happen. The Committee to Protect Journalists now has undertaken a review of its documentation of journalists killed in the Israel-Gaza war since 2023. I mean, that is a huge development, announcing a full review of the journalist death toll in Gaza after Hamas and Islamic Jihad embarrass it by publishing obituaries identifying their own dead as terrorists disguised as journalists. There have been 20 names removed so far, and their review is due next month as well. Just another aspect of this. I mean, even the absurd term journocide, like genocide, was coined because so many journalists, in inverted commas, were targeted. This is yet another piece of Islamist propaganda that the world has swallowed so readily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that you're highlighting this, Peter, because you are better placed than anyone to do so. Because, of course, you know, some people who should know better have swallowed what you've said there. You know, that they've talked about, as you say, genocide and all that. And they talk as if the Israelis have been murdering journalists. What they ought to be talking about is that a terrorist group, and in fact more than one terrorist group, because Lebanese Hezbollah does this as well, actually has their own fighters and their own terrorists masquerading as journalists in order, and really you would think that most journalists' reaction to that would be to say that that is undermining the profession and is an insult to journalists who do the job properly. So I'm really glad that you are highlighting it. Of course, it is, one of the things that sometimes saves us is the stupidity of our enemies. The fact they can't resist bragging about their martyrs has undermined the narrative, if enough people will pay attention to that.
You got your job at the United Nations because of your lifelong interest and expertise in security and counter-terror. I just wonder, when you see Keir Starmer saying that he wants to be Secretary General of NATO, what's your reaction?
I mean, I don't dislike Keir Starmer. I think he's probably an honourable man, probably did his best. Maybe even, in a few years' time, people might look back and say, well, he was some kind of safe pair of hands. But he's made some terrible mistakes during his 2 years as Prime Minister. And I think the thing that disqualifies him absolutely from the NATO position is that he was partly brought down by the loss of confidence in his leadership, in his own Defence Secretary and senior military team.
Yeah. Edmund, always worth chatting to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this evening. That's Edmund Fitton-Brown there. He's the former ambassador to Yemen from the UK. Thank you to the texter who says, good evening, Peter. Good evening. Having been to Israel, I understand why they have to keep on so that the 7th of October never happens again. The Jewish people have suffered enough from time beginning. They continually keep being targeted as committing genocide, but it's happening to them constantly. They're having genocide committed against them. It's sickening and has to stop, but I fear it never will, says Penny. I hope you feel better soon. Nothing worse than a summer cold in this heat. Thank you. I'll survive, Penny, but I appreciate that nonetheless. Neil says, great show as ever. You have to admire Starmer. Secretary General of NATO gives him a much bigger cohort of troops to prosecute, pro bono, of course. He's a genius, says Neil. Stuart's been in touch on parents reading to children. A professor said this. What absolute tosh. Parents who do not read properly can't read themselves. The professor needs to actually go and do a physical study of two families, one which watches TV all day. And another one, well-brought-up backgrounds and not so well-brought-up backgrounds should be used. The professor just needs to wind his neck in. Or does he spend all of his time doing these rubbish studies to get cash or cash funds for his own studies? He must need to study because he's not that clever. I think if someone becomes a professor, hopefully they're clever. Debbie says sponsoring refugees equals sponsoring potential terrorists. It is ridiculous. And another person's been in touch on text saying migrants being able to work as these people have no history. How can they have a job when risks have not been established? Having a job gives them a reason to stay that in court would be deemed preferential to conditions in their home country. Stipulated and monitored volunteering hours would perhaps be a better option. Well, thank you for that. Lots more calls, text, tweets and voice notes coming your way in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
Let's get to the calls now. And Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to...
Disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people...
more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We were talking to Joe Wheeler a little bit earlier on about the fact that she, as a weather forecaster, believes another heat wave is on the way. I've just had enough of the heat, but things are heating up at the World Cup. The FIFA World Cup has officially kicked off across Canada, Mexico and the USA. Many people looking forward to England's game in a couple of days' time. Here at Talk, we're celebrating the summer of football in style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash? That is right, £26,000 could potentially land in your pocket with a few clicks of a finger, and you can spend it on whatever you like. If your bank balance could use an upgrade, here's everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
We're going to be talking to the Conservative MP Katie Lamb in a few minutes' time, and she's posted an extraordinary video. She's been talking in Westminster about a shop in her constituency. She actually did a shift there to understand what was going on, and she visited the store, I think it was last Friday, not as in a few days ago, but the previous Friday, to watch the morning shift, and there's just so much shoplifting that is happening there. And she said the only time the police have visited that shop was to tell them to take down photos they put up of shoplifters due to GDPR issues. Their human rights may be infringed and their privacy may be infringed if you put posters and photographs up of shoplifters. I say do it as much as you can to try to actually target them. The process to report shoplifting being slow and repetitive. We'll talk a little bit about that with her in just a few minutes' time, but I want to go to the phones now, and Matt is in Cheshire and has some thoughts on Burnham. Matt, I know you have never been a huge fan of Keir Starmer. Do you have any faith in his probable successor?
Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Matt. I think your chuckle has perhaps answered the question.
Take a wild guess.
Yes.
After his speech this morning, if anybody using the words hope or change should be discounted from political office immediately. It's like a political jambalaya bingo of a festival of cliches and sort of sickening, sort of boring, fake hope. And he was in the party that began the decline in the North, and his councils that he represents and his mayoralty has led to lots of the decline in the area that he represents.
I mean, he would say there's quite a lot of growth in the Manchester City region. Is your criticism warranted with that in mind?
I mean, I say it again and again and again. Building a few skyscrapers in central Manchester does not represent growth in the declining towns of Greater Manchester. He literally does nothing whatsoever. And it was just such a benign door. It sounded like something they basically can't get over Barack Obama's speech, the Shepherd Fairy poster of hope from about 25 years ago.
I remember that poster actually, because and I remember the Barack Obama saying yes we can, and the thing was, the interesting thing with Barack Obama's first campaign was yes we can, and vote for hope and all the rest of it, and then of course the second campaign in 2012 was change takes time. He had 4 years, and then he was saying, well, actually, it just takes a bit longer. And I wonder if Andy Burnham can change things, or whether the change he talks about, to me, it just sounds like a lot more office jobs. It sounds like a lot more administration, actually. And larger government doesn't necessarily mean better government, Matt.
I can see a porter cabin somewhere in Manchester with number 10B written on it.
Yes, and a cat in the corner.
They're just like, what are you doing? What is it? What do you think 30 years of neglect of the Northwest, the Northeast and the Midlands were all suddenly going to jump back into your lap because you're offering us what? More devolution? Devolution has evidently failed throughout the United Kingdom. And, it's just, they just don't get it, Peter.
You're not sounding very levelled up to me, Matt.
It's just... Well, we got £20 million from Boris Johnson, and it's being spent at the moment. We got it in 2022. Our council are spending it at this moment right now.
What are they doing?
And they're just doing little bits in the town centre, and they started doing it just before the local election started. Isn't that convenient?
It's funny though, with the timing there. It's a very interesting coincidence there, Matt, isn't it?
2 years they had that money before, and they chose to start spending it just before the local elections started.
Matt, I've said it before and I'll say it again, just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. Matt, thank you for that, really appreciate that. And thank you to Elisa, who sent the message to say, fab interview with Edmund once again, always providing well thought out analysis full of facts. However, I have to disagree with him on saying that Starmer is probably an honourable man. He brought the whole country down into misery. On sponsorship for so-called refugees, it should include them being sponsored, Peter says, to live anywhere anywhere they like, as long as it's not the UK. Andrea in Essex has a view on this Home Office plan. Andrea, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, hello there, Peter. Well, unbelievably, I just might be about to pay a compliment to one of our politicians in the Labour Party, believe it or not.
That's okay. That's okay. Just take your time, and we'll get through it together.
Okay. So it's Shabana Mahmood.
Okay.
So you watch these blooming lefties and the Labour government saying, well, they have to come on the small boats because there aren't any safe and legal routes. It's their only choice. It's not their fault. It's our fault because we haven't got any safe and legal routes. And that's how they defend the boat migrants all the time. So I'm wondering if she's actually being quite bright in some ways, because they won't be able to use that excuse anymore.
The thing is that there are safe and legal routes, and there are so many people in the migration industry, and it is an industry that lies about this. There were until recently 9 safe and legal routes. Yeah, they're from places like...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, there have been. Ukraine, for example, Hong Kong.
Of course.
There are lots of different ways that people can get here safely and legally.
I think people called that more temporary resettlement, didn't they?
Yeah, and that's fair enough.
It's just a play on words.
Yeah.
But I do.
But you think she might be onto something, Andrea?
Well, I just wonder. I doubt it, because either way, she's letting a load more people in, isn't she? For goodness' sake, like we need them. But I just think that it might be a way of tripping up her own Labour government. In fact, taking that thunder away from them to a greater extent than maybe there is now.
Yes, I mean, very interesting point there. But do you think overall she's been a good Home Secretary so far, Andrea?
Absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Every single last one of them, absolute rubbish. And earlier on, they were asking for a name of the number 10 North Cat. I'd call it Catastrophe.
Catastrophe. Andrea, thank you for that. Andrea in Essex there. And Michael says, call the cat Pet Lynch. I like that very much. That's very good. Although people don't know who Pet Lynch is anymore. We had a young producer who was wearing a kind of leopard print kind of number, a jacket with leopard print, and I said, oh, it's very Bet Lynch. Just absolute, kind of look of blank look there, certainly. And I do fear the legend that is Bet Lynch or Bet Gilroy has been just a generation just don't know who she is, which is very sad. Anyway, lots more to discuss. We'll talk about shoplifting with Katie Lamb in just a second. She's a very interesting Conservative MP, tipped as a future leader of the party, actually. And she'll be joining us, telling us about what has happened there, and also a reaction to Andy Burnham. We'll ask her about that as well, and in terms of what he said today. I want your reaction too. 0344 499 1000. Plenty of calls in the next hour. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for your company. It's just gone 9 o'clock, and whether you've been watching for the last couple of hours or you're just joining us, you're very, very welcome. We're going to speak to Katie Lamb in a minute. She's a Conservative MP who has been spending time at a shop, seeing shoplifting happening firsthand and realising how rubbish the police are at it. We'll talk to her about that. We'll also talk to her a little bit about Andy Burnham, about what he's been doing and saying today. A big speech. He says he wants a number 10 of the North, he says, but will it just be as what Matt said a few minutes ago? One of our callers said it'll be a porta-cabin in an industrial estate. We will find out, I'm sure, if he becomes Prime Minister, which looks very, very likely. This hour as well, we'll also be talking about immigration. We'll be talking about all sorts of matters, and indeed, we'll talk about the thousands of deported migrants back in Britain within years of being kicked out. The country has been branded a national joke. Lots to discuss on all of this. 0344 499 1000 makes you part of the conversation. Lift the phone and let me know your thoughts. Plenty of time for conversation on the phones between now and 10 o'clock. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell on socials. It's Cardwell Peter, confusingly, on Instagram. You can also you send us a voice note. You can send one of those through on 0344 499 1000. That's the number for calls and WhatsApp text messages as well. Loads to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, Katie Lamb is a Conservative MP for Weald of Kent and joins me now. Katie, there was a video that was put up of you speaking in Parliament. I think it might have been Westminster Hall. You're very welcome to the programme, by the way, about shoplifting, and you did a shift in one of the shops in your constituency, as I remember watching. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that and what you found when you did.
Yes, of course. So there is a fantastic local shop called Shop Around the Clock in a village called St Michael's, which is just near Tenterden in my constituency. And Suki, who runs that shop, who's one of the owners and who runs that shop, got in touch with us and said that he was completely plagued by shoplifters. And he invited us to come and have a look, to come and see some of his CCTV. I actually did that initial visit about a year ago, and then I just wanted to get a bit more of a feel for exactly what it was like at the moment for people who are running these shops, running small businesses. And so I went in and I did a whole morning shift with him, which I really enjoyed. And he taught me through some of the problems that he had with thieves over the years and the response or not of police. And then he also got me to file his police report for his most recent theft, which had been on the Tuesday of that week.
So just talk me through that shift. Talk me through what you learned, and if people came up to you and you said, if it's not on the shelves, we don't have it. What else did you kind of learn from that? And specifically, were there shoplifters there when you were in the shop itself? Was there shoplifting that occurred when you were there?
No, so that not that we could tell at the time.
Sure.
There's in particular at the beginning and the end of the day, especially either side of the school day, there's a real rush, and so you can't really have eyes all over the shop the whole time. But Suki reviews the footage at the end of the day or the week and checks back and sees if there's anything that he missed.
How much is Suki losing? Did he talk figures in terms of how much financially it's impacting his business?
So he can't always tell for sure, but several people will rob him in a week, and he owns this store and he owns all of the inventory. So it's very easy, I think, to see shoplifting as, if not a victimless crime, not a crime that has a direct personal victim, but he buys all of this inventory himself. I mean, it is like going into his house and opening his fridge and taking out the food that he owns. So it's he's over the course of the year, it's easily thousands of pounds.
Mm-hmm. And what sort of response have the police had? Because there was a very interesting point in your speech there in Westminster about the police response and when they actually came to the shop. Tell us about that.
One of the things that people bring up with me is as particularly frustrating and infuriating is this idea. Sometimes people describe it as a narco-tyranny. The idea that if you're a good person, you're a normal person, you're a law-abiding person just trying to live your life, that the state is really oppressive on you. But if you are a rule breaker, if you're a criminal, if you just don't care, then the state lets you get away with it. And what's happened to Suki, I think, is a perfect example of that, where He's being robbed all of the time. He is recording all of these thefts, all of this shoplifting, and the police don't come out, except he also posts pictures of some of the people who most frequently steal from his shop. And then the police say that this is a violation of GDPR, and their advice to him is to take them down. So,
I mean, that's outrageous that they are not solving the problem. Can they solve the problem? Is it within their power to solve the problem? Because I cover this a lot, and I think your point is absolutely right about a question I often ask, which is, where is the reward for doing the right thing? There are lots of people in our society who are rewarded for doing the wrong thing, and there are lots of people like Suki, great, very good person in his community, running a business that needs to happen, who's not getting any reward from that, in fact is being penalised. But I just wonder whether it's within the police powers or whether people like you in Westminster need to give them more powers to deal with this.
Well, we know from, I think there was a report from the think tank Policy Exchange that the police are spending 60,000, hours a year on non-crime hate incidents. We know that there's a huge amount of police time that goes on bureaucracy. Some of that is policy, but some of that is, frankly, internal decisions that are made within the police and in bodies like the College of Policing. But of course, the police are absolutely in a position to stop shoplifting, to prosecute. Lots of shop owners I know and shopkeepers are giving the police full details, license plate. Often, particularly in small villages like the ones in my constituency, people know who these people are.
Yep.
They can identify them by name. They can tell the police where they live, and they have it all on camera. And yet, these people continue to get away with it. And it's easy to think each time, oh, well, it's only a this or a that, or it might only be a £5, or it's a £10, or it's 20 quid. But the sum total of that is that effectively people can just take what they want. And then for the rest of us who are paying the retail price, we feel like mugs because we all play by the rules and try to do the right thing. And then exactly as you say, people who then try to do good things get crushed. I don't know if you saw last week or the week before, there was an environmental activist who's cleaned up his local river because the Environment Agency wouldn't do anything about it. And they're now threatening to prosecute him because he didn't have the right permit. Go after the people who are dumping the waste in the river in the first place. Don't go after this guy.
Well, it's often the way, and these crazy stories certainly get emphasised, and certainly there are so many local authorities who don't do the right thing, and agencies as well. Katie, I just wonder, when it comes to shoplifting, I mean, we've had also some crazy stories of people who've tried to intervene to stop shoplifters. We've had people being told and threatened with their job, with someone who lost their job at Waitrose, for example, was offered a job at Iceland because it was such a controversy. We spoke about that a few weeks ago. What are people in your constituency, and specifically Suki, what does he do when he sees this? He obviously reports it and so on, but is he afraid to intervene?
So it depends. I've actually been to every corner shop in my constituency to ask them this question, and the response really depends on who they are, what the corporate policy is. Suki owns and runs his own shop.
Yep.
So he's in a position to decide what to do. And if he feels that, it's safe to do so, then he will pursue people. He will say, that's not yours, or you're going to need to pay for that. But there are lots of places where, particularly where the people who are working behind the till might be women, particularly where they might be younger, and increasingly so if they are working shifts on their own, which is something I know that lots of people who work in shops have told me that they worry about, where it just wouldn't be safe for them to do anything about that.
Very, very interesting stuff. We're going to continue talking about this, and if there are things that occur in your constituency that you think we should be covering, I'd love to hear more from you on that, Katie. I wonder if I could ask you just about Andy Burnham, who's going to be the next Prime Minister if all falls into place for him. He's talked about further devolution, and I know your party leader, Kemi Badenoch, says that further devolution isn't going to solve the problem. I just wonder what your impression of Andy Burnham's speech today was.
Well, the main thing that surprises me, or I think is cheeky, to put it charitably, is Andy Burnham is now trying to pitch himself as, you know, this outside establishment, non-establishment figure. He's coming in, he's going to shake it up. He's a breath of fresh air. He's coming from Manchester. He's coming from a different part of government. This man was an MP for a very long time. He was first elected to Parliament in 2001. You know, some people say to me, oh, you know, what do you think of Andy Burnham? He used to be in Parliament. And I say, well, I don't know, because I, at the time, was in primary school.
Yes.
This guy could not be more of an establishment Labour figure. He was a Gordon Brown cabinet minister.
It's a special advisor. He went to Cambridge. I mean, there's nothing wrong with either of those things, but nonetheless, they do make you a pretty establishment-y kind of person.
And for him specifically, I mean, for me, you know, the watershed is, have you actually been elected to Parliament before? Because that means that you've been making decisions and you've been making them in your own name. And he was an MP for a very long time. He was a minister for a long time. He was a cabinet minister. So it's difficult to take seriously the idea that this man, who I think has already stood for leadership of the Labour Party twice and failed to be elected, is going to be a brand new dawn for the Labour Party. He is an establishment party man through and through.
Speaking of people who could be establishment people and have been in government before, David Miliband is being touted as perhaps the new Foreign Secretary, maybe even from the House of Lords. He has said previously that he believes this country could take 5 times the number of asylum seekers that it has. I know you have a big focus on home affairs, and I just wonder what you think of David Miliband as Foreign Secretary, and indeed what the government wants to do today, talking about sponsorship programmes for refugees, for asylum seekers to come to this country. What do you make of that?
I think it is at best naive, and at worst deeply dishonest and undemocratic when the British people, who are very generous and very tolerant and have over many, many years always done their very best for people all around the world who might be suffering, to say basically that there's just no limit on the number of people who can come here. You know, we are already seeing very high levels of people both claiming and being granted asylum in the UK. It is hard to absorb even that number of people, both, you know, economically and in terms of infrastructure, and also culturally and in terms of integration and assimilation and making sure that people understand the culture that it is that they're moving into. The idea that this number can just always go up and up and up, it will simply never be enough for these people.
It's a very good point. And just finally, before you go, the junior doctors in England have accepted a pay deal. That news broke just a couple of hours ago. Should we give the Labour government credit for doing the deal?
I haven't seen the details of the deal itself, but I mean, this is a deal that in opposition they said was incredibly easy. You know, they just had to come to the table, I think was the phrase
That's right.
that West used. And yet they've been fighting with them for 2 years. The strikes have continued. Everything that we have seen tells us that conceding only really tends to encourage more negotiation and more striking. So I think the proof of the pudding will be in whether or not those strikes actually stop.
If you pay the Dane, if you pay the Dane girl, you don't get rid of the Dane. Yeah, indeed. I think that's probably going to happen. Katie, very interesting to talk to you. Do join us again on the programme. It's Katie Lamb, MP Conservative for the Weald of Kent. Really interesting particularly on the shoplifting element there. Just tell us your thoughts and experiences. It'd be really interesting to hear from you on that. There's plenty of time for calls between now and the end of the programme. 0344 499 1000. Ernie says, I think there should at least be a leadership challenge to someone who has been brought into a sitting government. If not, it opens the door to all sorts of shenanigans. People have been saying for a long time, even before Labour got in by default, that something like this was on the cards and that Starmer was just a caretaker manager. He was led deliberately to upset genuine Labour voters so a knight in shining armour could ride in and save us all. It stinks, says Ernie. I think that's maybe a wee bit too conspiratorial, but I do think we do need to question Burnham's motives. I think we need to question what he's actually going to do, and indeed where he's going to live, because he's reportedly no plans to live in number 10 and will remain at his home in Manchester. I don't think that can happen. Bobby says, what a creep Starmer is. He's a failure as Prime Minister. Now he wants a top NATO job. He wants to be Secretary General of NATO. I would have thought he would have done the decent thing and retired to keep bees like Sherlock Holmes, says Bobby. Leslie says, if Burnham wants to devolve powers from London, then there's no need for Parliament, so MPs can stay in their constituencies. No need for second and home allowances for them either. Another person says, love the show. Thank you very much indeed. Do you think Keir Starmer should have resigned sooner? And what are your thoughts on Andy Burnham running for the number 10 job? Starmer has been, I just don't think he should have run to be Prime Minister in the first place. I think he was over-promoted as Shadow Brexit Secretary, quite frankly. I remember going to see him speak in Parliament. This was years ago when he was Shadow Brexit Secretary. I was a special advisor at the time. I saw him speak and I just thought, this guy is not a public speaker. This guy isn't, maybe he's in command of the detail, I don't know, but there's no charisma, there's just sort of nothing there, and absolutely nothing in the years since that has in any way made me think anything differently. And in terms of Andy Burnham, I'm a bit more charisma, bit more of a public speaker, but does he know what he wants to do? Because one of Starmer's main problems was he didn't know what he wanted to do, he didn't have a plan, and he was reacting all the time. Government can happen to you. I know this from being in government for 3.5 years. It can just happen. You can react to events, you can do things, you can make decisions based on what has happened. But unless you are laser focused on your strategy, on what you want to do, on the fact that you don't have enough time to do it, Burnham, I think, will probably have 3 years. I think he'll probably draw that out as long as he can before the next election. He's going to be fighting an election in essentially for a year of that. Obviously, the campaign will only be a few weeks, but people will say, when are you going to call an election? What are you going to try and do? Blah, blah, blah. So he's really got 2 years. So is he sitting down saying, where do I want to be in 2 years' time? How am I going to work back from that? What needs to happen after a year and a half? What needs to happen after a year? What needs to happen in 6 months? What do we need to do right now to start this? The classic example of this was rape gangs. You had, Jess Phillips, Keir Starmer saying he supported her actions on this, that he wanted major action to happen. Jess Phillips did not do anything in regard to dealing with rape gangs, changing things, getting an inquiry, or properly getting legislation in to change things. She sat there, she was in the Home Office, she talked a lot about it, she talked a very good game, she talked a very good game in opposition, but in terms of stuff that actually changed, tangible outcomes for people who had been dealt with, people who had experienced that horrendous cancer in our society, very little actually changed in the last 2 years, apart from the fact that this inquiry that Labour didn't want to happen. Unless you have a plan on day one, unless you know what you want to do at the very start, and then you say to the civil service, who want direction all the time, you say, this is what we're doing, go and do it. I will support you through this plan. Here is the plan. Unless you have a plan. Starmer didn't have a plan. Does Burnham have a plan? I listened to a lot of what he said today. I'm not sure he has one. So I hope that answers your question. Angie says, good evening, Cardi P. What an absolute joke our government are. We have a Prime Minister who stood his ground until Andy Burnham decided he needed more than a mayoral role, more than a mayorship. Our political system is broken. We have a man who thinks he's the king of the North, suddenly being catapulted into the major role in our country. No election, no polls, no public opinion. It's a coup, it's a plan, and it's dangerous in Angie's view. We will get more on this from our callers. If you want to be one of them, if you want to be on the air between now and 10 o'clock, please do give me a ring. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, whether you should read bedtime stories to your children... Sorry, it's not even a debate. You absolutely should read bedtime stories to your children. This loony academic, Professor Adam Swift, says that people should feel guilty about it because you're disadvantaging other children. Apparently, you shouldn't try to help your children. Maybe you should just leave them there and not potty train them. Maybe you should not feed them anything other than the crap food. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. Of course, every parent wants to give their kids as many advantages as they can, and if they don't, they shouldn't be parents in the first place. Stephen's been in touch on bedtime stories.
Regarding the professor who says that reading at bedtime unfairly disadvantages other children, does the professor ever reflect on the fact that him getting a PhD unfairly disadvantages many other people who are unable to get PhDs and therefore unable to get the social status and income that his PhD has enabled him to get?
Very good point, Stephen. I must say that I had probably not a real chance, but certainly the potential to maybe at least pitch for a PhD at one point, and I didn't, and I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever because it's a heck of a lot of work, let me tell you. I also know a very good friend of mine who's an academic in Manchester, and he earns a heck of a lot less money than my friend who's a plumber. So who's the real smarty pants is my question. Brian says, good evening, Peter, regarding the Home Secretary's idiotic idea of sponsored immigration. When this turns bad, and it will, she should be held personally responsible for any murders, rapes or terrorist attacks from just one of these individuals. We are talking more about that in just a few minutes, Brian, because Henry Bolton, the immigration expert, is going to join us to talk about that. On Andy Burnham as well, lots of people in touch about this. Will more devolution work? Whether he as a Prime Minister will even work by itself. So let's hear just a little bit about what Andy Burnham, the self-styled King of the North, has been saying about how things will work when he's Prime Minister. He had a big speech today.
The job of Number 10 North will be to make power flow into the Midlands, into the southwest, into the east of England, and yes, into London, as I said before, as much as into the northeast, Yorkshire and the Humber, and here in the northwest. It will be about offering new opportunities to extend devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland by taking power deeper down. The people of Dundee and Bangor feel just as distant from Holyrood and the Senedd as they do from Westminster. Number 10 North will be the nerve centre of a rewired Britain.
All good words, but what does it actually mean? And also, when it comes to more devolution, there were 11 different areas in 2012 that were asked, do you want more devolution? Do you want a locally elected mayor? 9 of them said no. Ruby is in Salford. Ruby, you'll know all about Andy Burnham and what he was like as mayor of Greater Manchester. What do you make of what he said today, Ruby?
Hello, Peter.
Hello.
By the way.
How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Right, great. Andy Burnham is a Trojan horse. It's again the only reason Labour got in was because everyone was sick to death of the Conservatives, and the only reason Andy Burnham has got a sniff of the barman's apron is because everybody hates Keir Starmer. He is a good man. I've met him because I used to work for an architectural firm in Manchester, and I've had meetings with him about planning permission, etc., etc. And he's a decent bloke and he's well groomed. Very, very well groomed. The only grooming he'd like to speak about is men's grooming. So he doesn't speak about any other kind.
Yeah, indeed. And a lot of people say that there's actually a lot for him to do when it comes to rape gangs and when it comes to grooming.
Well,
I wonder, Ruby, whether you think he has any legitimacy as Prime Minister, because a lot of people calling for a snap election. I don't think it's going to happen, but why would it? It's not within his interests for it to happen. But do you think there's legitimacy there?
Sorry, I interrupted you. The thing is, you see, look, we've got no say anyway, because it's going to be the politicians going to vote, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. If they even do, yeah.
We've got no say. So what will be. They'll do what they like anyway. They'll tell you one thing and then do a complete different thing. I mean, I hope he has a good crack of the whip, but I'm doubtful. I mean, like I say, he's a Trojan horse, and he's just as left.
When you say he's a Trojan horse, do you think there's stuff we don't know about him? There's a sinister agenda there?
Oh, no, I don't think he's sinister. I mean, his eyebrows are quite sinister, but I don't think he's sinister.
Yeah.
I think he hasn't got a sinister bone in his body. I mean, I think he's from Lee. I think he's up.
He is from Lee, yeah. He was originally MP for Lee, anyway. His kids went to school in Makerfield.
Right. And the thing is, well, anything's better than what's just gone.
Okay. So things can only get better.
Well, no, you see, because that's what we said when, be careful what you wish for.
Well, it's a very good point, and I think the Labour Party may do well to listen to you, Ruby. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Julian Hitchin says, Andy Burnham's Here I Am speech, being so vocal about the North with respect to our family north of Watford. What on earth is he doing, setting aside and burning every voter south of Watford, methinks. What an idiot, says Julian Hitchin. I have some very good friends live in Hitchin. They're very good people, and Hitchin's a great place. I think, is it the White Hart is the name of the pub? Very nice pub. Teresa says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Teresa. I really don't understand how someone can just walk into the most important job in the country after just being elected as a politician. We really don't know anything about this man. Sorry, I think we need to have an election and let people decide. Great show. Miss you at the weekends, says Teresa. Well, thank you. Well, Alex Phillips obviously doing a great job at the weekends. I kind of miss the weekends, to be brutally honest. I really enjoyed that show, and it was a really nice time slot to have, but I'm really enjoying this one. And there's more of me as well, 5 nights a week, and I will be here 5 nights a week. I'm not going anywhere. No plans for holidays until the end of the summer, so there's plenty of politics and plenty of other issues to go through and to talk through as well, including with Kevin in Dorset, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Kevin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi there. It was reference to the bit where Andy Burnham was talking about this breaking up the country.
Well, he wants devolution. He wants to make sure that people have more of a say.
And I think the reason we have to be careful with this is because if he gets his way and he has this devolution, then people were saying, well, then we're going to have different county councils making their own decisions, not following government. Well, actually, what will then happen is it will leave the door wide open for, as what the lady just said about the Trojan horse, for Sharia law to be brought into our counties without any say in it whatsoever. The government will have no power to do anything about it, but actually that's what's already happening. It just hasn't been formalised.
It's a really interesting point, and of course there are far too many Sharia courts in this country. There shouldn't be any of them, and Correct. It's a very interesting point that you make there. And I think that certainly when it came to Maccabi Tel Aviv and that disgraceful decision in regard to the football team as well, there was a local element to that. There are no-go areas, and that's something I worry about. And I mean, that I think we have local councils, and that's fine, but when you have all these different bodies, especially when it comes to advising the police and so on, and community representatives to the police, I mean, the point is the police should be totally independent. I'm not saying don't listen to the community, I'm not saying don't respond to their needs, but they should not be controlled by any of these bodies. So that's a very, very interesting point you make there, Kevin.
Yeah, and it's we've already seen the Sharia police, for want of a better word, on horseback.
Yeah, that is something we've reported there as well, and we do need to worry about that. And I don't want creeping Islamisation in this country any more than you do, Kevin. In fact, thank you very, very much for your thoughts on that. Really appreciate that, and all the callers who have been in touch. We're going to get to more calls between now and 10 o'clock. Petri Hoskin will be here between 10 and 1, as she is every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. So we'll have a chat with her as well. And thanks to Nat, who has been in touch from Tel Aviv on this parenting story about reading to your kids. It's a weird fact that apparently Professor Adam Swift, who has said that parents should feel guilty when they read to their children, is the son of Clive Swift, who was the actor who played Richard in Richard Bucket or Bouquet in Keeping Up Appearances. And Clive Swift died reasonably recently, and Nat says, I love Clive Swift. Do we have to tarnish his memory like this? And it reminds me of Mrs. Bouquet saying, mind the pedestrian, dear, anytime he was driving on the road. It was a pretty good series. I think it got a little bit repetitive towards the end, but Dame Patricia Routledge was superb. And of course, another Dame sadly left us today, Penelope Keith, who was To the Manor Born and lots of other things as well. I saw her in theatre once. She was absolutely superb. She has died today, I think aged 86. Alex in Cardiff says, I'll come to that in a second. Fran in West Sussex says, reading to our children was a pleasure and encouraged by school. We still don't let them have iPads at bed. Good for you, Fran. On another note, I can't believe if this country is skint, we are going to make more civil servants, and even worse as a taxpayer, we will need to pick up the extortionate cost of the government having their house in London and the travel between the North and London. I do wonder, are there local civil servants who can do this, who can go to this number 10 of the North, or will there be people from London with their London waiting? Civil servants get paid more money in London because London's more expensive than the rest of the country, being sent up to Manchester. Maybe they'll be put up in hotels for the first time. I really do think it will cost a lot of money, and I'm not sure there's going to be any tangible benefit. Also, Michelle says, I'm actually sick of hearing about Andy Burnham already. Michelle, get used to it, seriously. You're going to have a lot more over the next 3 years, I would imagine. I'm not just saying this because I dislike Andy. I see he is nothing more than a better, more convincing liar that has been parachuted in by the state to try to save Labour. And people are falling for it, says Michelle. The guy is an animated puppet, nothing more. He will continue the agenda. His blathering speech said nothing. It's all lies and manipulative pantomime. Our people, our children are being killed daily, and all mainstream media are talking about is slimy Burnham, says Michelle. Alex Cardiff has sent a lovely message, says, bless you, Peter, I can't bear seeing you suffer with your cold. I'm off to pray for you. Only just over half an hour. Go on, you will make it. Do you know what? I don't actually feel any discomfort at all. It's all absolutely fine. I just have a cold, you know. Let's not worry too much about that. And I'm sure if I was genuinely ill, I wouldn't be at work. But yeah, you can just hear it in my voice, I suppose, and especially if you're listening on the radio. But thank you to everybody who's been so nice about it, because you are a very kind bunch. Right then, lots to discuss, not least on migration and what the Home Secretary wants to do about that. We'll speak to Henry Bolton about that in just a second, and I want your views too. Plenty of time between now and 10 o'clock. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. We'll get to more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes in just a second, but there are quite a number of stories about migration around. Thousands of migrants who'd been deported from the UK were later found back in Britain just years later, according to a Sun investigation by a very good new recruit for them called Ricky Freelove, who was on Drive a little bit earlier on. Ricky used to be our news editor and has headed off to the Sun. He's betrayed us all, but we'll forgive him. Nearly 4,300 individuals who had previously been kicked out of the country were back in the UK between 2021 and 2025. He's revealed that with his investigative reporting. We also know that funding healthcare, education and welfare is going to add up to £141,000 each for each asylum seeker. That is figures from the Home Office itself. These are people who invoke the European Convention of Human Rights to stay in the UK, costing the taxpayer £4.9 billion over their lifetime, to say nothing of their dependents. And the Home Office as well. Another story, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, vowing to introduce new capped, safe and legal routes for refugees to come to the UK from later this year. Well, to discuss all these stories, I'm joined by the border control expert, Henry Bolton. Henry, perhaps we could start with these safe and legal routes. Any person I ever speak to who is on the other side of the migration debate to you and me will always say there must be more safe and legal routes. The fact is they have existed. I've had people deny they even exist in the first place. They absolutely do exist. Should we have more of them? Is Shabana Mahmood's plan the right one?
We do have them. They do exist. People do enter through them. And no, we most certainly should not have more. There are also some specific concerns about this particular program. So, for example, the sponsorship element of it. So the idea is that families and various groups, ill-defined, but sort of so-called vetted groups, are allowed to sponsor refugees coming into the UK from places like Eritrea, Sudan, Somalia, these sort of places, Myanmar. And so we don't know who these people are, but bear in mind that we have got a historical problem with false businesses sponsoring visas, false academic institutions sponsoring visas, legitimate businesses and academic institutions sponsoring visas that have then been misused by the immigrant. So there's a long history and quite a deep history of misuse of, if you like, the outsourcing of sponsoring of visas for refugees and immigrants generally. Then you've got the fact that you're going to end up with any appeals under the Home Secretary's new sort of ideas, the appeals to asylum extraditions or deportations are going to be heard now by civilians. Now, they're talking about civilians with some sort of legal background, and they might have some sort of status sort of similar to magistrates.
I mean, shouldn't that just be a judicial process, Henry? I'm really worried about this, actually. I'm worried about the wrong type of people making the wrong type of decisions and it not being looked at completely impartially, as it's supposed to be. Doesn't always happen, but completely impartially based on what the law is.
Yeah, and this is what concerns me. This is the state outsourcing immigration decisions, effectively. And that has to be a concern to everybody in this country, even the immigrant community in this country, because it places everybody at risk. None of the vetting aspects of it are clear, none of the support aspects of it. These people are going to want healthcare, welfare, and all the rest of it. And none of that seems to be transparent, or maybe it's not even been thought through yet. So I think this is a really problematic proposal. And the other thing is, we've already got more than enough people in the United Kingdom that we can't cope with. The economy is struggling, largely because
Well, no, you're wrong, according to David Miliband, who may be the next Foreign Secretary. He's been Foreign Secretary before. He has argued previously as head of the International Rescue Committee, not Thunderbirds, just to be absolutely clear, that we should have 5 times more asylum seekers in this country, that we could absorb them.
Look, he's talking out of his backside. He's not living normal life like ordinary people in places like Bolton or all over the country. Come on, we all know. Most of us who live a normal, real life in this country feel the weight of this. We all know that we're paying taxes that are going towards paying for these people, as you've just said in the top of the piece. So, no, I'm quite happy to come on with Dave Miliband or anybody else and discuss this with them. But the thing is, they never will. Because then they will spout forth, and they will never actually be confronted with the other side of it. They'll always evade that. The fact of the matter is that we've got far too many people here. We know they're committing crimes. We know they're committing serious crimes such as rape and assault, including on very, very young children, as we've heard one horrendous case recently with the death of a 2-year-old. We know that there are terrorist offences being committed by these people. We know that we can't vet them all. We know that. And almost by definition, if they're coming from some of these more unstable places, you can't access the documentation. You can't access the background and so on. So we are opening up, honestly, I think, a national security threat and public safety and security threat, because it's not just there are some of these people who are going to cause a problem. It is that there are tens, hundreds of thousands of immigrants coming into this country, and we've no idea who they are. And now we're looking at outsourcing the checks and balances on it as well to non-qualified civilians. So, no, I think the whole thing is outrageous, and I think this government has totally lost the plot. But it doesn't surprise me because it's ideologically driven. That's where our problem is. And when it comes to the cost that you talked about at the beginning, the cost of 141,000 per migrant. Well, yeah, but that's just the surface of it. Of course, it's a very difficult calculation. There's a lot of sort of unknown unknowns in that. But it doesn't, for example, include dependents. Because when somebody is given leave to remain in the United Kingdom, they can bring their dependents over. Now, we know that, for example, if a Muslim man has married more than one woman abroad, he can bring them in, and he can bring their children in.
And they would actually, because they're legally married, not in the UK but elsewhere, would be entitled to various benefits that a wife would be entitled to, even though polygamy is not law in this country, it's not legal in this country.
Correct. So absolutely correct. So this is a figure of £141,000 for one person, when actually very many of those individual persons are going to be bringing a whole number of people with them on their ticket, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, briefly, if you look at Denmark gets around this in the main part because Denmark has passed domestic law that actually defines, because most of the people that we're talking about in that calculation are people who have been allowed to stay in the United Kingdom under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which allows right to settled family life. So, you can claim you've got a job, you can claim your kids are at school, you can claim your wife has got a job, or whatever, all sorts of ways of arguing that case. In Denmark, there is domestic law that very much narrows the definition of settled family life. So, for example, they've just passed legislation back in May that says the only person that you can claim you're settled with in somewhere is your wife or spouse. Mm-hmm. So that's it. It talks about integration. If you've not picked up the language, if you're not paying your taxes, then you haven't got settled life in Denmark. So they've tightened that down, and because it's tight in domestic law, that is the domestic decision or definition of settled life or family, your family life, because they've defined that. Now these people can't apply all the various imaginative sort of defences to deportation that they do in the United Kingdom under Article 8. It's just that we've not defined it.
Yeah,
it's a political decision.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting point, and we were actually talking previously about Denmark and the immigration minister and the call to prayer. That's something we talked about a few days ago. Listen, thank you for your thoughts, Henry. That's Henry Bolton there, international security and borders expert. Really interesting to speak to him. And thanks to Carol in Liverpool, who's pointed out that Andy Burnham was not born in Lee, he was born in Aintree. So thank you for that. He was, of course, the MP for Lee. I think between 2001 and 2015-16, whatever it was, he became Mayor of Manchester, Mayor of Greater Manchester. So thank you for that, Carol. Appreciate that, and I'm glad you're watching the programme. Thank you to Leslie as well. He says, which of the celebrity lefty lovies who spout refugees welcome are going to sponsor these migrants? Yeah, very interesting point. I'm not sure how many of them are going to be living in Vanessa Redgrave's house. Brian says, I wonder if any Labour MP is going to sponsor an immigrant and put them up in their home. Yeah. Another person says Burnham will not call a general election. Makerfield voted to get Starmer out. Now he's gone. Burnham could lose his seat in a general election. It's absolutely true. And many, many other Labour MPs, including the ones supporting Andy Burnham and making him Prime Minister, could lose their seats too. I just don't think it'll happen. I'm often wrong. I get things wrong. I'm not, when it comes to political predictions, things are very difficult. But I think there will be a general election that will not happen until 2029. I think Andy Burnham will, if he becomes Prime Minister, which is almost certain, I think there's absolutely no incentive for him whatsoever to not hold on as long as he possibly can. Legally, he can hold on until July 2029. It just wouldn't surprise me if he does that, or thereabouts anyway. Another person says, when a politician starts talking about hope, I think that sounds like a cross your fingers and pray for a miracle. The country is completely doomed. Hope? Just laughable people are pinning their hopes on this bloke. I do think you're right with that. I do think Andy Burnham is going to be very much the Liz Truss of the Labour Party. I don't think he's going to be the Messiah. I don't think he's going to change things dramatically. Maybe I'm just too cynical, maybe I'm too long on the tooth, maybe I need to give him a chance, but I would just be very surprised. He lost the leadership of the Labour Party. He went for it twice previously. He wasn't a particularly good health secretary. I think, you know, it's reasonably easy to be a good Metro mayor because everything that goes well you can take credit for, and everything that goes badly you can blame Westminster. Call me too cynical, but as I often say in this programme, just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. We will follow every development of Andy Burnham in the evenings on the Evening Exchange between 7 and 10, 5 nights a week. I want all your views on what he does, what he doesn't do, what he says he'll do. Tell me all your thoughts on that, and indeed how Britain is governed more generally, and anything else you want to talk about. Give me a shout, 0344 499 1000. We'll have a quick chat with Petri in the next section as well to find out what's happening on her programme between 10 and 1. But we'll talk to you too, so do give me a ring, 0344 499 1000.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Bob's been in touch and says, as far as Scotland goes, devolution has been another disaster. Burnham is a chancer, far too full of himself, overdoing this Manchester stuff. Nice to have Kitty Lamb on, a very likeable human being. I've actually never interviewed her before. I don't know Kitty Lamb, but I know her reputation, and I was very interested to hear what she had to say there. Bob has also said, could Burnham become an MP without even making a speech in Parliament? It's possible. It is absolutely possible. He'll want to make his maiden speech before he becomes Prime Minister. It's almost certain that he will become Prime Minister, and it'll be very, very interesting to see when he does that, because the pressure will be on to do it before he becomes Prime Minister, but it's not outside the realms of possibility that his maiden speech as a new MP will not be made in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what he actually does. Let's speak to Karen in East Sussex, who has some thoughts on devolution and where power lies. Karen, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, I'd like to say that it's not for one man to wake up and decide he wants to redraw how Britain's governed, and to put it forward like a decree isn't devolution. You know, real devolution on this sort of scale, the scale that he's talking, it isn't a speech. It needs legislation through Parliament, funding settlements from the Treasury and formal agreements with the local areas that are meant to be taking on those powers. I mean, are they up to it? Can they do it? And all of this is like bread and circuses, like a grand new...
You think it's meaningless?
Yeah, it absolutely is bread and circuses because it distracts from the real issue that got us here. The people didn't turn on Starmer over the wiring of Whitehall. They turned on him over immigration.
Very good point. And that was a word, Karen. Immigration was a word that Andy Burnham did not utter once today.
He didn't. And that's the disillusionment that's driving all of this. And it's being ignored again while we're handed a constitutional reshuffle instead of an answer. And no MPs have been listening to the Tory party today, are coming out and saying it. And at the same time, we've got the King, through a press release, now telling us that he's going to be defender of faith rather than faiths. Well, the King, I'd like to tell a few people, the King can't do that. It's written into the Constitution, into the Act of Settlement of 1701. The King swore his coronation oath to be defender of the faith. Now,
he's also head of the Church of England.
Yeah,
he's the Supreme Governor of the Church of England, for goodness sake.
It's in the Act of 1544, 1559, the Settlement
You
Act.
know your Reformation, Karen.
I do. I'm a historian. I've had my work in the BBC recently, covered on the anniversary of Anne Boleyn's death.
Wow.
But this is the thing, right, what's very important here, because we're having constitutional changes. Press releases from the King and from the Palace, cannot change the King's role. That comes from Parliament. It's written into the Constitution. But faith, because this is important, faith for Christians is a very specific thing. It means faith that you believe that God, for his love of mankind, sent his only son and sacrificed his only son. That is what faith is. You were saved by faith and saved by grace. And the first commandment in Exodus tells us that you will have no other gods before the Lord God. And it says specifically, when Charles is publishing his thing in his Christmas speech, talking of synagogues and talking of mosques and all these other things and people, and that everybody's got the light, well, the Christian faith is very specific on this, because it says, Christ says, I am the light.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting you mention that, Karen.
You can only go to his Father through him.
And this is a point, Karen, if you just final thing before you go. I mean, the point of almost any faith is, and any religion, is essentially saying, this is the right one, everybody else is wrong.
Well, no, we're a Christian country. It's not as simple. That's to oversimplify.
Well, it perhaps is an oversimplification, but if you have faith, you're saying, this is what I believe to be correct, therefore other faiths are wrong.
No, because faith is not belief. This is a really important thing. It is not belief, and it is not different religions, in actual fact. I mean, Christ told his disciples, who'd given everything up to follow him, that they had no faith. Well, we all know that he believed in him. So it's a different thing altogether. But we are a Christian country. That is our settlement.
Okay.
And the King cannot change that without an act of Parliament. So why are the MPs not challenging him?
Very interesting point. Karen, listen, thank you very much for that. I've learned an awful lot from that call. Marie is in Barry in Wales, and I want to speak to Marie just before the end of the programme. Hello?
Hello?
I think you've still got the telly on or the radio on behind you. Maybe you could. I tell you what, you go and sort that. I'll bring you back in 1 minute. Sort that out, and I'll just read these couple of messages, and then I promise you I'll go back to Marie. Leslie says, "Will Burnham have time to completely destroy the country with his plans in 3 years?" Ernie says, "I read somewhere online today that the billions being spent on asylum seekers being paid from out of the overseas aid money, so that doesn't affect the inflation or GDP, and that's why the government isn't really bothered about it." I don't know if that's right. It is right. It is correct. But if that means genuine people who need that overseas aid are missing out, do you know where the money is coming from for them to pay the illegal migrants? No, you're right, Ernie. It is correct that the money, a lot of it is coming out of overseas development aid funds, and that is going into Home Office coffers. So you're right with that. Marie has switched off the TV or the radio. You're very welcome to the programme, Marie.
I have switched off the TV. I'm right here.
Okay, I don't obviously encourage switching off this programme, but when you're on the air, there's a slight delay, so it's always very important to do that. What would you like to say on Burnham, Marie?
I would like to say his idea of this devolution thing and moving number 10 is totally ridiculous. I live in Wales. I'm in my 50s now. When I was in my 20s, I was all for the devolution of Wales.
Yeah.
Not so much now.
Do you think devolution has made Wales better governed?
No. I think this country has, the whole of the UK is always going to have the north-south divide.
Yeah.
But what Andy Burnham is trying to do is create that thing again.
You think he's actually trying to make people more divided because of this?
The 14th century did it.
Interesting stuff.
There was a revolt.
Yeah.
In the 15th century, they were right. It's never going to work.
Yeah. Marie, I just wonder, I mean, what I often find happens with devolution is that the devolved institutions often blame Westminster and say there's not enough money or they haven't been given enough power or whatever. That, to me, seems to have happened quite a lot in Wales.
Of course. You know, the north is likened to South Wales with the pits and the mining and stuff like that. But it's happened historically. Over hundreds of years.
Yes.
But by creating another divide, when we've already got so much division in the country anyway,
yes,
you can't. You're just bringing it in again.
Yeah, Marie, really, really good points there. Thank you very much. Great call down, and lots of history in the last few minutes as well about the Reformation, the Peasant Revolt, and all the rest of it playing into today too. Lovely to see Petri Hoskin, who is here on the other side of the news. Hello.
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 Yeah, devolution. Didn't we try that with the NHS and it didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, there are actually 4 NHSs. There's in Northern Ireland, it's not even called the NHS, it's called the HSC, and or the HSE. No, the HSC, and there are different outcomes. I mean, Wales has been a disaster.
But we gave all the trusts all their own money, didn't we? And
it was Andrew Lansley, I remember.
And now we've got this Russian roulette of what people spend. Like some trusts will spend 2 pence on a syringe and others will spend 25 pence on a syringe. Yeah, indeed. So I don't know, I mean, devolution, I suppose you've got to give it a go.
On the syringes.
It works in Germany.
Well, on the syringes, very good point. What's coming up in your programme?
Coming up, we're going to be talking about Andy Burnham. In fact, that's the talkback. You know, do you feel optimistic? Because there's one thing about his speech this morning, it was the tone